power exceeds that of the Sorcerer Supreme.
Look, I really don't want to hurt you.
I wouldn't stress about it.
Oh!
Okay, tiny dude is big now. He's big now.
I guess that's the signal.
Guys, look, I'd love to keep this up, but I've only got one job here today, and I gotta impress Mr. Stark, so...
No, you didn't.
I
You
did
could
think this
not
through.
have possibly thought
You
this
can't
through.
be a friendly neighborhood Spider-Man if there's no neighborhood.
It is not our way to be judge, jury, and executioner for people who are not our own.
No Banner, only Hulk.
What are you doing? It's me.
One might overlook the depths of appreciation for Aquaman within the Justice League. Sure, his capability to communicate with marine life might seem pretty niche, but let's reel in the bigger picture. The oceans cover about 70% of our planet, harboring uncharted territories and mysteries. Aquaman isn't just some guy who talks to fish. He's the bridge between those two worlds, a literal middle ground between humanity and the mysterious deep. His trident isn't just a fancy fork, you guys. It controls tides, wields immense power, and symbolizes authority. I mean, just think about it. The Justice League isn't just about battling supervillains, it's also about safeguarding Earth's entire spectrum, both above and below the waves. So perhaps it's finally time we give Aquaman the recognition he deserves for his role as an unsung guardian of not just our cities, but also our oceans. If you're enjoying the video so far, you can support the channel by pressing like, subscribing to Top 10 Nerd, and ringing that notification bell. I really appreciate it. Dr. Light, no, not the villainous one. We're shining a light on Kimiyo Hoshi, the heroic version. During Crisis on Infinite Earths, Hoshi got a cosmic power-up courtesy of the Monitor. But she didn't just twiddle her thumbs after that. Oh no, she actually joined forces with John Kent's League. Fast forward to a mission with Damian Wayne where her true potential ignited. She latched onto her powers like a life buoy in the Sea of Trouble, seizing the Great Darkness's link to the Dark Army. And using her cosmic juju, she was able to keep the wonky multiverse in check. Like, imagine the multiverse like a Jenga tower on a shaky table. That's Dark Crisis for you. But thanks to Dr. Light's intervention, that tower stood up tall. So that tower stood up tall. At number 8 is Martian Manhunter. When it comes to the Justice League, we often find ourselves focusing on the big names like the iconic Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman, but let's not forget about the underrated gem in the lineup, Mr. Martian Manhunter. John Johns, as he's known on his Mars block, boasts an impressive record. He's been a steadfast member since the League's inception, a fact that might even surprise the most dedicated fans of the superhero world. While he took a brief hiatus to deal with his own rogues gallery in Metropolis, Martian Manhunter proved his mettle when the chips were down. The Dark Army threat called him back into action alongside his super buddies, and there he stood, resolute and ready. In an ultimate showdown, he, like other heroes, met his quote-unquote demise, only to triumph through the chaos, showing us that his place was never in question. John Johns, the shape-shifting, telepathic powerhouse, truly deserves a spotlight among Earth's mightiest heroes. At number 7 is John Constantine. Enter John Constantine, the unassuming yet pivotal member of the Justice League. Nestled within the DC universe, his mastery over the arcane and his sharp wit are his greatest assets. Constantine's recent exploits with the Justice League Dark demonstrates his prowess in thwarting even the most menacing of adversaries. His instrumental role in quelling Merlin's Earth-threatening havoc showcased his resourcefulness. But it's not just about the supernatural. When the cataclysmic onslaught by Pyrrha on the multiverse unraveled, Constantine's significance truly shone. United with the League's unconventional champions, he orchestrated a daring expedition into the Starheart. This voyage unearthed the elusive ties between Pyrrha and the looming Great Darkness, unraveling a truth vital to preserving the cosmos. So without Constantine's calculated audacity, the unraveling of this intricate tapestry might have remained an unrealized endeavor. At number 6 is Detective Chimp. Detective Chimp, a seemingly unconventional member of the Justice League Dark, often flies under the radar. Nestled within DC's magical realm, Detective Chimp's inclusion might appear puzzling at first glance, yet he's a strategic asset with a rich history. Having intertwined with the Shadow Pact, he actively combated the Spectre and assumed leadership. His saga continued as he merged into the JLD, significantly contributing to toppling the enigmatic Upside Down Man. Engagements against mystical adversaries like Merlin and Xanadoth further underscore his prowess. What's remarkable is that Detective Chimp lacks innate magic. His power lies in his encyclopedic insights and deductive prowess. A nonchalant chimp on a couch with a beer might not scream hero, but this tale resonates with the essence of heroism, leveraging what you possess in unexpected ways. At number 5 is Black Canary. DC's trove of superhero houses some major players, yet few shine as brilliantly as Black Canary. Striding confidently in her signature leather jacket and fishnets, she exudes a unique aura. A formidable Justice League member, she's no stranger to clashing with villains like the Royal Flush Gang and Xanadoth. Do any of you nerds remember the Pyrrha incident? Well, it didn't end well, and thanks to Barry Allen, she returned to the fray. At number 4 is Zatanna. DC Comics is a realm brimming with Caped Crusaders and superpowered saviors, and harbors an array of mystical manipulators, none more captivatingly enigmatic than Zatanna. When the formidable Wonder Woman found herself momentarily absent, it was Zatanna who gracefully shouldered the mantle of command, guiding the Justice League Dark. Her pivotal role in orchestrating the League's standoff against the sinister Merlin can't be understated. Amidst all this arcane chaos, she deliberately relinquished control, a calculated gambit that culminated in Merlin's undoing. But this was merely the tip of her metaphysical iceberg. See, Zatanna emerged as a linchpin in the League's conquest against the formidable Xanadoth, locking horns with Pyrrha and his nefarious Dark Army. With unwavering mettle, she showcased why she deserved the crown of the League's unsung champion. Throughout all of last year, Zatanna became omnipresent, an indomitable force safeguarding the multiverse, and an unsung sentinel shaping destinies with every uttered incantation. At number 3 is Hippolyta. Hippolyta is a formidable Amazonian warrior, proud and strong. Her introduction into the Justice League as a beacon of hope and might was anticipated by many. But alas, the anticipation doesn't always translate into reality. You see, Hippolyta's presence within the League remained akin to a whisper in the tempest, overshadowed by the cosmic machinations of Perpetua and the enigmatic Batman who laughs. But fear not, for every star has its moment to gleam. Enter Wonder Woman Historia, a tapestry woven in the loom of imagination. Within its pages, Hippolyta emerges not as a mere figure in the background, but as a central force. We traverse her ancient battles, her defiance against mighty Zeus, and her valiant struggle to emancipate women from their tormentors. In this alternate avenue, Hippolyta illuminates the narrative with deserved radiance, proving that even obscured stars can blaze anew. At number 2 is Wonder Woman. Wonder Woman, a symbol of strength and justice who has been a cornerstone of the Justice League, yet her pivotal role often goes unnoticed. In 2022, her journey across the multiverse and involvement in the trial of the Amazons showcased her resilience. Stepping back from leading the Justice League Dark, she aided both the leagues against the formidable Xanadoth, and notably, her contribution in the showdown against Pyrrha and the Dark Army stuck out. Rescued by Barry Allen, she emerged in the final battle, emphasizing her unwavering commitment. Although in this series her time in the League was limited, the quality of her actions spoke volumes. Wonder Woman's return marked a turning point, spotlighting her often underrated significance in safeguarding the League and the broader universe. And at number 1 is Green Arrow. Green Arrow often finds himself lurking in the shadows of the limelight, but let's not underestimate the gravity of his contributions. So you see, 2022 was a really good year for Green Arrow. Not content with mere archery prowess, he silently bankrolled the League's operations, an unsung hero in the financial realm. When the Royal Flush Gang and Xanadoth posed threats, there he stood, bow drawn, ready for action. His devotion went beyond the battlefield. When Black Canary was summoned to the Hall of Heroes, uninvited was he, yet a resolute in companionship. Pyrrha's ominous Dark Army meets its match, and eventually Pyrrha's ominous Dark Army met its match as the battle ensued. Yet it was Green Arrow's sacrifice that tipped the scales, obliterating Pyrrha's machinery and securing triumph. It just goes to show that superhuman strength isn't always about flashy costumes and booming catchphrases, so the next time you find yourself pondering the capabilities of these unsung heroes, let's remember that sometimes it's the quieter, less celebrated members who possess astonishing abilities beyond what meets the eye. And as we continue to unravel the mysteries of the superhero world, let's always keep that sense of wonder alive, because you never know what incredible feats might be lurking just around the corner, ready to amaze us.
Coming in at number 10, it's photographic reflexes. This superhero power is usually attributed to one character. At least in Marvel Comics, that character would be Tony Masters, otherwise known as Taskmaster. Taskmaster's photographic reflexes ability allows this guy to watch another person's physical movements and duplicate them without any practice or training, no matter how complex those movements are. Tony is able to duplicate almost any physical activity after seeing it done by someone else only once, even using this ability to master complex gymnastics routines and play difficult pieces of music. But it goes beyond mere mimicry. He has often shown the ability to actually predict an opponent's next move before they even make it if he has studied their fighting style enough. Opponents who are skilled at improvisational fighting styles, or who have a more random, unpredictable style, are less likely to have their moves predicted by Taskmaster, though, of course. Another benefit that comes with his photographic reflexes is that Tony can push his body past its natural limits, meaning his agility and speed can increase itself to match that of other superhuman speed and agility. It also makes him an excellent teacher, so pop that on the resume. Number 9. Dimensional storage. While this kind of power is more often just used as a trope in television and comic books where characters pull objects from seemingly out of nowhere, it has also been used as an actual legit power, and it's all a result of spatial manipulation and/or dimensional travel. We have seen this ability used by all sorts of characters, from the wizards of Harry Potter with their tense buildings or bags, to characters like Ramona Flowers from Scott Pilgrim who pulled a massive hammer out of a tiny little purse. In DC Comics, Green Lanterns store their lantern batteries in a pocket dimension from which they recall it when they need to recharge their rings. From Marvel, the mutant Abyss houses a portal to an unknown dimension that he can freely pull objects in and out of. The Spider-Man villain Spot is basically composed of holes that go to a pocket dimension. Deadpool has been known to use this trick from time to time, although it's hardly ever explained because it's Deadpool. Then, of course, most characters with cartoon physics do this too. These pocketed dimensions are not limited to any physical location and can be applied pretty much anywhere. Whether it's a portable bag, a pants pocket, a closet, or with a character like the X-Men's Dupe, it's literally inside of him. A hero with this ability can basically store anything, even people, so long as whatever it is fits the entry point. There's no need to worry about the weight of the objects in storage either, as it's floating in an unlimited space or it's on a massive world-sized dimension, eliminating the strain that comes with carrying it. I think this is pretty awesome. Number 8. Cypher. Cypher has what some people believe to be a pretty horrible mutant ability, especially when it comes to combat. Personally, I would kill to be able to subconsciously translate any written or spoken language, human or alien. He can also subconsciously understand body language and intention, as well as decipher codes and computer languages. After he was resurrected, and also so Marvel could make him actually useful, everything that he sees is interpreted into language, basically making him able to read life. I don't even know if that makes sense. Everything I just said is strange enough, but I can wrap my head around it to some degree. Sort of. Then, you tell me that this man can, quote, speak in binary code. In New Mutants Volume 3, number 14, a guy operating a mech comes upon Cypher during a battle, and this mutant speaks to the mech saying, "Hello, you don't have to do this. You know, I can set you free, show you how to think for yourself." And he says it in both English and binary code at somehow the same time. The dude operating the mech understands him since he's speaking English, but for some reason, the mech, which is not artificial intelligence, also understands him, boots the operator out, and begins talking in zeros and ones. I don't even know. Number 7. Darkness Manipulation. Sometimes called Umbra Kinesis or Shadow Manipulation, darkness manipulation is the ability to create and manipulate darkness or shadows. It's basically control over the absence of light, which is a weird thing to think about. What's cool is that usually this darkness is so powerful that it cannot be penetrated by light, and sometimes not even by other energies either. Characters with this power are able to give their own shadows life, and others can generate darkness, which in DC comes from a place called the Shadowlands or the Dark Zone, and in Marvel, certain characters like the hero Cloak access it from the Dark Force dimension. DC's Teen Titan Raven, along with Richard Swift, the Shade, Darklight, and Shadowlass are all capable of doing this. So is the Bat God Barbados, who is able to generate and manipulate dark energy and cloak areas in darkness, and even fire dark lightning from his hands. Dark lightning makes no sense, but just roll with it. The Marvel symbiote god Null possessed the ability to create, control, and manipulate a fount of eldritch darkness, which was a manifestation of the primordial void that existed before the universe itself, quote unquote. That's what he calls the living abyss. With this, he was able to create the symbiotes themselves, including the all-black symbiote, which granted a similar but less powerful version of this power to others like Gore the God Butcher. Jordan Lewis, otherwise known as the mutant Gloom, had the ability to release a nerve-dampening darkness at will, temporarily blinding whoever he chooses. It's just a cool power, man. Number 6. Dazzler. Dazzler, otherwise known as Alison Blair, is a mutant with the ability to transduce sound into light. She is also a very gifted singer and performer, which she uses in tandem with her powers to just blow people's minds at her concerts. But she is more than that. She can take any source of sound other than her own voice, unless it's projected back at her, as light energy, which she stores up and can use in a bunch of really cool ways. Obviously, using the lights she emits, she can blind adversaries, but she can also create therapeutic light to help allies. Her Dazzle Blast, which is either the best name ever or the worst name ever, is a light show so intense that it overwhelms the nervous systems of whoever is watching it and can knock people out. She can also shoot lasers that can cut through solid metal and photon blasts that strike with concussive force. She can create quote-unquote light fog to hide allies. She can create force fields for offensive and defensive purposes, and she can even fly with this power somehow. She's become the Herald of Galactus in a What If comic, and she was actually one of the more impressive versions of Thor from God Doom's Thor Corps, even coming over to the 616 reality at one point. Dazzler is pretty awesome. Number 5. Count Vertigo. Count Werner Vertigo is of royal blood. He is heir to the throne of Vlatava. It's truly the most prestigious of titles, I swear to God. But that is not his superpower. Count Vertigo had a hereditary inner ear defect that affected his balance, which is also not a superpower. But Vertigo had a small electronic device implanted in his right temple that compensated that problem for him. Now, after tinkering with that device, Vertigo learned that he was able to affect other people's balance as well as fixing his own, distorting their perceptions so that they literally could not tell up from down, an effect known as vertigo. Werner used this skill most notably to fight Green Arrow, and that's honestly a pretty great hero to choose when you have this kind of power. He'd also join up with the Suicide Squad and Checkmate, using his powers to make people dizzy to his advantage. Honestly, this power is much more effective than one might think, and it has been used by other characters in comicdom, most notably Marvel's, wait for it, Vertigo, who utilizes psionic equilibrium distortion. With this power, she is able to project swirling mental waves of psionic distortion into her environment that affect the nervous systems of other living beings, focusing on the organs of the inner ear, causing extreme vertigo, nausea, disorientation, and have them experience hallucinations. Her distortion waves can render others unconscious and can also interfere with the superhuman powers of others, preventing their use or causing them to function incorrectly. That's an elite power, and I think it would be just fun to do to people who annoy you, because that's what I would do. Number 4. Blink. You know, in the beginning of the X-Men Days of Future Past live action movie when there's that really cool fight scene in the bunker between some mutants and the ultra advanced Sentinels? Well, you know that mutant that was firing out portals and stuff, just like throwing them all over the place? That is Blink, and she is super cool. Clarice Ferguson's power has a few different uses. Obviously, there are bright pink portals, but she can also throw that same energy as a sort of missile that will teleport those, or even parts of those, that she hits. The range of her power is actually quite impressive, as it has a potential range of as far as the moon and back, which is freaking far. With the potential of her abilities and the cool way it's used, and even just how awesome she looks, you'd think she would have done a lot more, but she seems to not really have a whole lot of meaningful appearances, except if you want to see her being as amazing of a character as she should be, you can find her in the Age of Apocalypse, and she is so cool. Number 3. Groot. The Flora Colossi from Marvel Comics are a pretty unique alien species because they are all basically just humanoid trees, and because we only really know of one, Groot. As walking and talking trees, they can do a hell of a lot more than your average human or alien. One of Groot's greatest abilities is that he's been completely destroyed on 3 separate occasions in the comics and has been able to completely grow back from nothing but a twig. You think being made of wood, Groot is incredibly susceptible to fire, but nope. The wood-like organic material that makes up his body is not only resistant to fire, but is thick enough that it's resistant to almost all weapons too, giving him pretty impenetrable natural armor. But then, because Groot has control over his own vine-like body and can grow and shape himself for a whole variety of things. He can grow to become even larger than he already is, he can elongate his limbs to reach things or act as a bridge or a ladder, he can turn his limbs into weapons, even wooden blades that are somehow actually sharp, but he also somehow has super strength. But then on top of all of that, Groot also has the ability to control plants, heal others, and he's highly intelligent and has a tremendous grasp of quasi-dimensional superpositional engineering. So yeah, it would be really cool to be Groot. Number 2. Husk. Paige Guthrie is part of a family that has a lineage of mutant abilities. Sam Guthrie was Cannonball, Joshua Guthrie is Icarus, Melody Guthrie is Arrow, and Jebediah Guthrie, I don't remember his superhero name, but he has superpowers. Paige's power is a wee bit unorthodox though. She has the ability to shed her skin, and by concentrating on specific chemical or elemental formulas, she can cause the layer of skin underneath to be a different element or shape or state. She can become any solid that she has studied and can imitate metal metal, diamonds, granite, wood, rubber, and even glass. And somehow, I don't know how this works, she's been shown to turn into a sharp-toothed lizard one time. I don't know. She doesn't have perfect control over her abilities at this point in time, but when she transforms, she obviously gains different abilities depending what she turns into. She has granted herself super strength and durability, flame generation, and many other things. Her shedding lets her get rid of dirt or sweat and even minor injuries, which is both cool and kind of a little freaky. She has all kinds of potential if she is given the time to properly train her powers. And finally, in at number 1, it's pheromonal persuasion. Zebediah Killgrave, the Purple Man from Marvel Comics, has the ability to secrete pheromones that, once inhaled by another person, allows him to control them using literal verbal commands, making them completely obedient to him. This power essentially lets him use words to completely override the willpower of others. Now, while Killgrave used this power to commit quote normal crimes like robbing banks, also more predominantly would use his ability to manipulate those of the opposite gender to fulfill his own desires, which is both incredibly despicable but sadly probably pretty realistic. Luckily though, this is not a power that is unique to Killgrave. Other characters like DC's Poison Ivy, Crimson Fox, and Resurrection Man, or Marvel's Spider-Woman, Daken, and the other members of Purple Man's family all use variations of this power for all kinds of things. Most characters using the power use it for villainy because, let's be honest, controlling others is pretty evil. A lot of the time though, it's used for romantic purposes, but it can be used to mark territory to make people not want to enter certain spaces, as a way of leaving a trail for somebody to follow, to disorient others or throw others off one's trail, and to increase one's level of stealth. It's such an incredibly subtle ability and versatile ability which makes it fly under the radar, but it's allowed some characters to reach super levels of power without much effort at all.
Kicking off the list at number 10, Superwoman. For this week, we'll be taking a look at Kristen Wells' Superwoman. She first appeared in DC Comics Presents Annual number 2. Now, she's from the 29th century. Kristen was a history student who traveled back in time to discover the origins of Miracle Monday, a universal holiday. She was quite committed to the craft, and it didn't take long for her to become Professor Wells. Her next field trip was a little more intense. Now she traveled to the 20th century to discover the secret identity of Superwoman, only to find out it was her the whole time. See, this Superwoman version of her took future tech, traveled back in time, and then saved the day alongside Superman at some point. Then she helped him take down King Cosmos. It was a pretty big deal. And then Wells traveled back to the future to tell the people the secret identity. It's kind of confusing in the brain. And they're all pretty shocked, but they're thrilled nonetheless. They gather and they celebrate Kristen's accomplishments that technically haven't happened yet in their timeline. What an odd party. Hey Kristen, great job. She's like, thanks, it was hard. Number 9, Rip Hunter. Making his first appearance in Booster Gold issue 13, Hunter is a guardian of the Time Stream and leader of the Time Masters. Not bad on a resume. Rightfully so. I mean, right from the start, this guy was preparing for enemies a time traveler would face. He was worried somebody would go back in time and prevent him from being born, so he got ahead of the game, or behind it rather, and then he hid the details of his birth from the public. I have to include Rip Hunter because we mentioned Booster Gold in our last futuristic hero list. Rip Hunter is the son of Booster Gold, but not even Booster knows that, so no one tell him, no one text him. Hunter has seen many days being a time traveler, of course. He was one that witnessed the birth of the new multiverse, and he played a major role in the defeat of Mr. Mind. He of course is a genius when it comes to temporal machines, but when you have literally all that time on your hands, you have time to kill and therefore time to train. Rip Hunter killed time by studying martial arts from BC to the end of time. So you don't want to mess with him in any timeline or else you'll get choked out in some era's version of Taekwondo, you know? Guys, before we continue on with this list, you know the drills, nerds. If you want to go ahead and give that video a thumbs up, it really helps us out here a bit. You're the best, thank you so much. Let's get right back to this list. You know, quick little intermission. Number 8, Adam Strange. Adam Strange was once a normal dude. He was an archaeologist working in South America when all of a sudden he was transported to the planet of Ron. The Zeta Beam signed him out of work early that day. You always want it to happen. You're like, come on Zeta Beam, I'm tired. The leader of Ron, Sardath, teleported Adam there, and then Strange didn't waste any time. He got a flight pack, he got a ray gun, the whole Mandalorian package. He was on board. The Radians and him got along famously. It was pretty good so far. He even charmed Sardath's daughter over there there, and they eventually fell in love. Now the beam effect wore off, so he did eventually return to Earth, but after predicting where the next Zeta beam would hit, Adam scheduled those trips, those archaeological trips, around that location. He needed to marry Alana, so he has to check in with the fam. I get it. Now it turns out this beam wasn't too leisurely, it had purpose. Radians were becoming more and more sterile, so this beam was actually searching for a suitable mate on all these planets. So Adam met the Justice League after assisting in a battle with Kanjuro, but when he was offered membership, he declined it, because he was too committed with the Radians. The jetpack and the ray gun, I mean, he's obviously busy, he's shooting things flying around, he's got his hands full, literally. Number 7, Caleb. Caleb of Hydros made his first appearance in Superman the Man of Steel Annual, issue 5. He's from the Legends of the Dead Earth crossover, when Lex Luthor XL activated Krypton Protocol. Now at this point, Lex was the leader of the Galactic Empire, some Star Wars level villain stuff here. His goal was to destroy every planet that met the specifications for a Superman to be born. So basically, if a planet showed potential, if it had a yellow star, his solution was just to Dr. Evil laser beam the planet into extinction, and then nothing will happen. Not a bad plan, I mean it's kind of brutal, but I guess it would work. So his target was this planet, Hydros. Now thankfully Brave Rebels also exist in this universe, so they snuck onto the planet and saved the last remaining inhabitant, Caleb. So once he got off this doomed planet, as Lex predicted, he became the Man of Steel. Number 6, Wave Rider. Matthew Ryder made his first appearance in Armageddon 2001. He's a time traveler who comes from a dark future. I love old comics when they talk about the future because the year that Matthew came from is only 9 years away from today. Yeah, he's from the year 2030. Will there be flying cars, hoverboards, Avatar 2? Nope, it's actually going to be ruled by Monarch. Spoiler alert, it's pretty bad. At this point in time, he's wiped out most of Earth's heroes. It's not looking too helpful, so Matthew was rescued during this madness by a hero named Bennett Dilly. Matthew volunteered himself to travel back in time and hopes to figure out what turned Monarch evil. Now the past year's subjects never made it, but Matt Rayner did. Thank God. Now, not only that, when he entered the time stream, he was transformed into Wave Rider. So now he's able to surf through time whenever he feels like it. The classic go back in time but get powers during the commute. Awesome, we love it. He's also the king of spoilers, because his new powers allow him now to see into somebody's probable future by merging with them. Imagine bumping into this guy and you're like, oh, sorry. He's like, hey, no worries, good luck on your pilot test. They're like, what? He eventually joined the Linear Men and helped Superman quite a bit when Doomsday returned the first time. He offered details on Doomsday's origin, and he took Doomsday to the end of time, which sounds permanent, but Brainiac was still able to revive Doomsday. But we love the effort. Wave Rider is great, ladies and gentlemen, just don't binge watch any shows with him. He'll spoil the last season before it's even filmed. Number 5, Bart Allen. Making his first full appearance in The Flash Volume 2, issue 92, Bart Allen was the grandson of Barry Allen, and his father was Don Allen, and his mother was Milani Thawne, descendant of Flash villains Cobalt Blue and Professor Zoom. Now Bart was of course born with his grandfather's gift of, traveling at light speed, but he also aged at hyperspeed too, which is concerning. When he was only 2 years old, his body was already at age 12. President Thawne had the Dominators abduct Bart so they could do experiments and all that evil stuff, but they ended up creating a clone of Bart called Inertia. Now Bart was of course going to die earlier than most people because of his aging problem, so Iris West took him to the 20th century to the third Flash, Wally West, so he could teach Bart how to control his speed and, not perish and still stay alive. Bart came back later as Impulse and was one of the founding members of Young Justice. Number 4, Calcula. Also known as the Ancient One, Calcula was originally around in comics for a year, starting with Warlord issue 5. Calcula was the Atlantean god of light and was considered one of the most powerful mages in ancient Atlantis history. Being a follower of the Lords of Order and being born before creation itself, Calcula and Dark Magistra had some powerful offspring, Orion and Garn Danuth. Now Orion was a demigod and Garn Danuth grew up to become an agent of order. All this power running through the family tree, but where did it come from? Calcula came from Darkworld. He was a protector of the creator of said realm. Kind of a big deal. Now it didn't take long for him to become a sorcerer king, and then he liberated Atlantis, and before you know it, him and his wife Magistra and 10 other mages created the Zodiac Crystals, which were basically these statues that were patterned after all the Zodiac signs. So if you're into crystals, there you go. This cult couple didn't last too long because Magistra unfortunately joined the dark side. Calcula stayed pure. He declared himself to pure white magic. Perhaps the best part of this guy is his ability to see the past, present, and future. DC Comics Presents issue 75 is a trip. A lot of time travel goodness in those old pages. You gotta go check it out. Number 3, John Fox. Making his first appearance in Flash Special Issue 1, John Fox resided comfortably in the year 2645. He was a historian for the National Academy of Science in Central City, and his life changed when the radioactive villain Manfred Moda showed up. He was causing destruction, the world was in chaos because of this guy, so the Academy decided, you know what, let's just send John back in time because we're in the future and we can do that. Hey, what's up? And then John can grab a Flash or two, come back, and then all of them can help us take down Moda. Now the plan of course didn't work because it's easier said than done. He couldn't get any Flashes to come back to the future with him, but during this cosmic commute, John himself got super speed, which is almost a better alternative if you ask me. He quickly suited up and took down Moda himself, quite impressive. This sounds like a dream scenario, but John lost his job when speed robots came into the picture. Damn robots taking our jobs, even in 2645. This is relentless. Number 2, Batman. On our last list of futuristic heroes, we mentioned Thomas Wayne, the Batman of the Flashpoint universe, who is a little dark to say the least. So for this list, we had to mention the time that Batman was sent back in time through Darkseid's Omega Beams. It's super fun and also really stressful. This happens during the 6-parter written by Grant Morrison, Final Crisis. Now it appears Bruce is dead during the story, but later on it's revealed in Return of Bruce Wayne that he just took a trip through time. He was sent back to multiple eras. I'm talking the dawn of history. Caveman Bruce Wayne, and then he jumps further in time and there's witches running around. It's really fun to see Bruce use his intellect to get out of these specific eras. That's the whole fun of it. Also, if you've ever wanted to see Batman as the historical pirate Blackbeard, well, now's your chance. Go check it out. And finally, number 1, Green Lantern. Green Lantern power rings are quite impressive. It can be used as a universal translator, it allows its user to communicate telepathically, and in Superman Man of Tomorrow issue 13, Superman goes nuts, so Kyle Rayner created kryptonite with the ring. It's pretty impressive, but you also may forget that the ring allows for one to time travel. Hal Jordan traveled to the 70th century once. He was brought into the far future to take down an evil government, but in doing so, the ring required enormous amounts of will and energy. So in turn, he ended up losing his memories and started going by the alias Paul Manning. So there was a point where Green Lantern was a superhero in 2 timelines, and that's why he's number 1.
Number 10, Powerhouse. It feels weird to have Franklin Richards at the bottom of a too powerful or most powerful style list. However, while Powerhouse was once one of the most powerful heroes in all of the Marvel Universe, even becoming so when he was just a little baby, so much so that his dad, Reed, actually had to shut off his son's powers, he has been having a rough go in the comics over the last little while. Franklin was believed to be a mutant with the power to warp reality, giving him access to a ton of extra power. But unfortunately, his powers have been on the fritz recently, and now he seems to have completely lost them. It's even believed that he was never truly a mutant, but instead subconsciously used his powers to alter his DNA, meaning that he can't even go to Krakoa currently anymore. I wouldn't expect us to see any kind of reality warping version of Franklin in the Fantastic Four film, if we get a version of him there at all. Although honestly, depowering him in the comics may be part of a plot to have him come into the film, more comic book accurate to who he is currently in the comics. Meaning production and writers wouldn't actually have to worry about his crazy powers and writing those in, which would likely get in the way of any massive threat, as while powered, he could normally stop, well, just about any of them, like that. No Infinity Gauntlet snaps, but just normal power reality warping snaps. Number 9, Rachel Summers. Rachel is 1, really powerful, and 2, just pretty unusual, which makes her a hard sell for the Marvel Cinematic Universe on both those fronts. Although the mutants will be coming soon, so there is a small chance, I suppose, that Rachel could show up at some point. Rachel isn't from the main continuity of Earth 616, but is the daughter of Jean Grey and Scott Summers, aka Cyclops, of her own reality, Earth 811. Rachel is considered to be Omega level, so in theory, the highest level there is of mutant, although there are a few who threaten to surpass that level in the comics. She is an insanely powerful telepath, telekinetic, and can also manipulate time, even being capable of traveling through it. Rachel can also shield herself against time manipulation from outside forces, protecting her against alterations to the timeline. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want more lists about all the cool things happening in the MCU, or not happening in this case, be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. Number 8, Squirrel Girl. It feels weird putting Squirrel Girl on this list, but she is weirdly one of the most OP heroes we have in the comics. Squirrel Girl is a hero who can pretty much defeat any threat she goes up against without usually even needing to fight. She handily defeated Dr. Doom using her influence over squirrels, and defeated Galactus just by having a conversation with him and being overall fearless. Squirrel Girl usually befriends many other heroes and villains alike whom she meets, which tends to be her secret weapon when it comes to winning any fight. Doreen Green is also a kind of odd hero, so we likely won't be seeing her in the MCU anytime soon for that reason as well. But honestly, I kind of wish that we would. She might be odd and weirdly OP, but she's also had a lot of great moments in the comics, and it would be really cool to see her cheerful, awkward, and infectiously fun nature come to life on the big screen. Number 7. Vulcan. Vulcan is another mutant who is likely considered too powerful and possibly too complicated to show up in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I know we are getting mutants, so likely a lot of these folks could be showing up at some point, but I don't know if Vulcan's gonna be one of them. Vulcan is not only Omega level, but is actually implied to be one of the few that I mentioned earlier who could potentially be past, or at least at times surpass, Omega levels. He is one of the coolest power sets in comics, which is also shared by other super awesome but perhaps less mainstream mutants such as Bishop. I love Bishop. He's another mutant that I would love to see show up in the MCU with the X-Men crew at some point. I mean, we did get Cable and Deadpool, so I feel like that could be possible. Vulcan has no limit to the type of energy he can absorb and utilize, even being able to harness magical or cosmic energy from the likes of Adam Warlock, although I do believe he does have limits when it comes to how much energy he can harness or utilize. Vulcan also can use his powers to reduce or even turn off the powers of those that he faces. Vulcan is Gabriel Summers, the mysterious younger brother of both Scott and Alex Summers. The one that for years we were like, does he exist? Why did Mr. Sinister randomly mention him and then we just never saw him? And then he finally showed up. In the 2000s, he was like, hey, just been here all along, doing other stuff in space, being real messed up. Number 6. Sentry. The Sentry would be an interesting character to have in the MCU because he is actually a hero who was retconned into existence. The Sentry is Robert Reynolds, who was revealed to be a drug addict that was looking for a fix when he stumbled upon the Golden Sentry serum, and accidentally basically became a hero. Unfortunately, due to the fact that Bob was mentally unstable, he ended up not just becoming the world's greatest hero, but also having another persona who was considered the world's greatest villain, known as the Void. When it was revealed that the Sentry and the Void were both Bob Reynolds, the heroes banded together to help Sentry make the world forget that he ever existed, which basically allowed the Void to also not exist. In so doing, Bob went back to living a relatively normal life, but when his memories began to resurface years later, he would return. Doing so would also awaken the Void within him, and it would once again be revealed, this time more to all of the heroes, that the two, hero and arch nemesis, were actually connected and the same person. Number 5. Silver Surfer. The Silver Surfer is one of the strongest beings in the Marvel Universe. He is considered to be the most powerful of all Galactus' heralds, and despite usually being associated with that Marvel antagonist, typically acts as a hero, even choosing to stay on Earth for a time after coming to warn them of the arrival of Galactus. Silver Surfer is Norrin Radd, a hero who possesses the power Cosmic, which grants him tons of astonishing abilities. The power Cosmic is OP. He's also virtually indestructible, being immortal, invulnerable, and having a healing factor, even if you could hurt him. He also now is basically untouchable, being intangible as well. And that might sound like a setback, but he can still merge with other living beings, in essence bonding with them and using them as a host. So even though he can't physically touch stuff, he kinda still can. The Silver Surfer isn't just powerful alone either, he also possesses the power to bestow portions of his powers on others, which would have been really handy when everyone was dealing with Thanos, his army, and the Black Order in Avengers Infinity War. Number 4. Hope Summers. Hope Summers is the adopted daughter of both Cable and later Cable's wife in the future, who is actually also named Hope, but not the same Hope. Hope was the mutant Messiah baby, the first new mutant born after the events of M-Day, and actually originally she didn't have a name at all. The baby would be raised by both Cable and Hope, only being given the name Hope Summers after her adoptive mother died, so she was basically named after her. Hope's mutant powers allow her to mimic the powers of others, managing to use those powers at their peak potential, even if she's completely inexperienced with them or unaware even of what they are or how they work at all. Hope's use of any powers she adopts is intuitive. She doesn't need to make physical contact to mimic them, she just needs to be in the area of the mutant who possesses them as well. Her own powers cannot be absorbed, and she has a calming effect on others' mutant abilities, basically helping to perfect and stabilize them. So Hope's also just a powerful character to have around if you're a mutant who's like, I don't really know what I'm doing. This makes her an integral part of the Five, a group of mutants responsible for resurrecting fallen or lost mutants of Krakoa. Despite the fact that Hope's powers are believed to be restricted to the adoption of other mutant abilities, she and Scarlet Witch together rid the world of the Phoenix Force during Avengers vs. X-Men. Now, this is kind of weird because Scarlet Witch no longer is a mutant in the current comic book continuity, which could imply that Hope's powers mimicry is actually not therefore mutant exclusive. Unless something else was going on there and it was more like Scarlet Witch influencing Hope, I don't know, but I'm just saying if Hope was influencing any of that, that doesn't make sense if Scarlet Witch is no longer a mutant. Unless that's all a lie, and that's going to be re-retconned away. Please do that. Please do that. Number 3. Phoenix. One hero that it seems is really hard to get right when it comes to the films is Jean Grey. Jean by herself is already likely too powerful to show up, although I will say I think you can make that work if you just, I don't know, put more of a lockdown on her power set. However, if we are talking Jean unleashed, Jean at her full potential, that's just not going to work. And if we're talking about bringing Phoenix into the mix and bonding Phoenix with Jean, that's also going to be a huge problem. Anytime you have a character like that who has the power to warp or manipulate reality, you're going to have a challenging time writing any kind of threat for them to face. As with what usually happens with Jean Grey, you can have the Dark Phoenix come in and play villain, you can have Jean struggle to control her own powers and even struggle to maybe hold on to her sanity in the face of her powers, but a hero who happens to have control and be able to basically fix the world as she sees fit, that's a problem. It's like any villain you face, you're just gonna be like, well, you're gone. You never existed. Done. Easy. What's next? Number 2. Living Tribunal. The Living Tribunal isn't entirely a hero, or not a hero in the traditional sense, but is usually considered to be a force of good because of what they represent. The Living Tribunal brings a force of balance and justice to the cosmos and across the multiverse. While there are many different alternate versions of characters from each universe, there's actually only one Living Tribunal, which watches over all of the realities, getting involved when they believe an injustice has been committed and the scales need to be balanced. Of course, only if the injustice is super great. They're not just like, hey, I saw you littered, that's not cool, let's go to court. So not every injustice. The Living Tribunal was the one to call to trial a case of 1610, or the Ultimate Reality, versus the current main continuity reality of Earth 616. This case was about determining which reality should ultimately be considered the true main reality, as the Living Tribunal considered that the Earth of 1610 could actually be a good replacement for Earth 616. Fortunately, She-Hulk was able to convince them otherwise, because She-Hulk is an amazing lawyer. Number 1. The Brothers. The Brothers are a duo of cosmic entities who exist even outside of their respective multiverses, as each one represents either the DC or the Marvel multiverse. These two characters initially showed up in a crossover comic called DC vs. Marvel, which already made it unlikely that we'll see them anytime soon in the MCU, because we would then need a crossover movie, which I don't think is going to happen yet. Maybe at some point. For a time, the brothers considered fighting one another in an attempt to acquire complete uniqueness, but instead decided, as they were pretty evenly matched, that they should appoint representatives from their universes to act as their champions. It's believed that the brothers are actually more powerful than the sum of their parts, meaning that even the Living Tribunal could be considered below them in terms of power levels and importance. While the brothers also have a male-centric name, the Brothers, it should be noted that they're actually genderless, so they're also kind of the sisters. They're just whatever. They're just called the Brothers. They look like giant mechs, so you know. No bits. I don't think. Number 10. Kang the Conqueror. While the future of Kang in the MCU is extremely uncertain, with Jonathan Majors being removed from future projects, the fact remains that in the comics, Kang is an extremely underappreciated villain. This is likely because not as many modern comics fans know how deadly Kang can be. If you are more a fan of the MCU, or if you are more of a modern day comic book collector and reader, you might have missed out on some of Kang's most epic stories and most deadly moves when it comes to him facing the Avengers. Although I will say that comics have been hinting at his power in recent years, if you know where to look. Kang is typically an Avengers villain. While he might look ridiculous on paper, many of us comic book fans know to respect him, as Kang is a master of time who has defeated an insane number of Avengers across the multiverse. I'm not as worried for the character's future in the MCU, because the other cool thing about Kang is that he's a time traveler, and as a result, he has many different looks and identities through the years. So it's possible that he could actually be anyone hiding in disguise, laying in wait for the right moment to reveal himself and strike. And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, why not show us you love us by clicking that like button. Number 9, the Lizard. The Lizard is a villain who often gets overlooked when it comes to Spider-Man fans. Why is this? Because not many people know just how dark and deadly the Lizard can be. And perhaps because the Lizard's alter ego, Curt Connors, is known for being a good man and a scientist. But that doesn't mean there isn't darkness lurking beneath the surface, even with as well-intentioned a man as Connors. And even without any potential darkness within Connors, the Lizard should be dark enough to persuade readers to be intimidated by him and respect him. You also have to think of how terrifying it must be for Connors' consciousness to exist within the Lizard when the creature is completely unleashed and fully in control. It's a complete lack of control in a way that is probably super terrifying for Curt. Number 8, Hunter in the Darkness. The Hunter in the Darkness is an interesting character, and one that honestly we do not talk enough about on Top 10 Nerd. And also super complex, to be honest. Villain, sometimes a bit of an anti-hero or an ally to heroes. While Wolverine did once free the werewolf-like being from a trap years ago, the Hunter still remained an adversary of Wolverine. It has been implied in the comics that there is a sense of camaraderie between the two at times. When we first met the Hunter in Darkness, it was made to seem like, and in fact some characters in the issue did think, that the Hunter was actually a more feral version of Logan. Number 7, Taskmaster. Everyone knows that Anthony Masters is insane when it comes to hand-to-hand combat. He has photographic reflexes, which allow him to learn any fight move or style just by observing or battling against someone, which makes him pretty hard to beat if you don't have some kind of crazy superpower set. Taskmaster might not be on anyone's A-list, but he sure has fought a ton of well-loved superheroes, including Moon Knight. Moon Knight himself doesn't have any crazy superpowers, but he does have a Batman-like ability to strike fear into the hearts of almost all of his opponents, no matter how skilled they are, which was really the only thing that made it possible for him to defeat Tony here. Number 6, Chameleon. Chameleon is definitely a hero who deserves more love and more respect, or at least more disdain if you love to hate the greatest villains. He was the first villain that Spider-Man ever faced in his own series. A lot of people don't think of shapeshifters or masters of disguise first when it comes to power levels, but the reality is someone who is really good at disguising themselves as other people can be one of the most deadly and unstoppable villains around. Look at what Mystique managed to do only a few years ago in X-Men's Inferno, or Chameleon in Devil's Reign. Not only is Chameleon great at creating chaos and hurting others by disguising himself as other people, but he also is pretty good at hatching his own plans as well. Number 5, Mystique. Mystique is someone who isn't particularly, or at least outwardly, powerful when it comes to what she's capable of and her power set, and for this reason many people have taken to underestimating her abilities. Here's why I would advise against that. 2021's Inferno issue number 4. In the Inferno series, it's revealed that while Mystique tried to play by Krakoa's rules, when she learned she wasn't going to get what she wanted from Magneto and Professor X, no matter what she did in the name of the Mutant Nation, she decided to take matters into her own hands, as Mystique so often does. I mean, that's why we love her, right? Disguising herself as many different people, she was able to easily ensure that Destiny was in fact resurrected, against the wishes of the heads of the Quiet Council. She also put into motion plans to make sure that Destiny would garner a spot on the Quiet Council, and then she was almost successful in enacting a revenge on Moira X for keeping her love, Destiny, from her for so long. Mystique here proves that while her power set may have become OP over the years, it's still really her mind and her sense of cunning that makes her honestly so dangerous. Number 4, Mysterio. Another villain that often gets dismissed when it comes to Spider-Man's rogues gallery is Mysterio. Mysterio is a villain that is all smoke and mirrors and illusions, which makes a lot of folks consider him to be a not so real threat. Still, in the cinematic take on the character, we saw Mysterio almost completely fool the entire world. Or well, even being defeated, he still kind of did. His plan here was to convince everyone he was a hero and win them over to his side, and even despite seemingly dying, I'm still not convinced, he actually still managed to succeed somewhat. In the Old Man Logan universe, Mysterio is also the one behind defeating all of the X-Men by tricking Wolverine into thinking all of his friends were really supervillains, thereby getting him to kill the entire X-Men team and School himself. Yikes. Number 3, Destiny. Destiny is one of those villains that is severely underrated. I mean, most people don't even think of her when they think about Marvel villains. Even when they think about X-Men villains, she doesn't happen to be one of the folks that first comes to your mind. And yet she is one of the most powerful out there, despite being very squishy, honestly. Even dead, she is somewhat of a threat in the comics due to her previously recorded premonitions. You see, Destiny is the lover of Mystique, and her mutant power is that she can see into the future. The more likely a future becomes, the more she can see that future, and her visions have often been known to be quite accurate. We don't have a lot of characters who can see into the future, and most of them tend to be on the hero side of things that do have that power, so it's interesting to see a villain with such rarely seen powers, but especially when you consider, you know, her alignment as a villain. Number 2, Madeline Pryor. Of course, I have to include the Goblin Queen. You guys know how much I love her. Anytime I do a list like this, she's one of the first people that comes to my mind, and we gotta talk about her. Madeline Pryor is a woman who seems to easily be forgotten and shelved, which is surprising considering how great of a threat she posed in the original Inferno story. Currently in the comics, Madeline Pryor is making a comeback, even going on to lead her own X-Men team, nicknamed the Dark X-Men editorially. Madeline Pryor has threatened the entire world with her dark rituals and demon pacts before, and though often forgotten, she really shouldn't be, considering just how dangerous and how powerful she is. Number 1, the Maker. The Maker is the alternate version of Reed Richards. I've always felt that Richards actually might make a better villain than a hero, and the Maker seems to have been this thought made manifest, living proof of it being so. The Maker initially started out as a hero, leader of the team known as the Fantastic Four. However, in the Ultimate Universe where he hails from, the original Ultimate Universe of Earth 1610, his and Sue's future of marital bliss was not as guaranteed. And in fact, after the tragedy of Ultimatum and Sue Storm turning down his marriage proposal, Richards got a different perspective on life, which inevitably resulted in him becoming a villain. In this universe, Reed had a rough childhood, and part of where his villainy started was in turning on his own family. A family that had honestly mistreated him for years. Yeah, in this reality, Reed commits patricide and matricide to get back at his parents. And that's just the beginning of his story as a villain. Extremely counter to his Earth 616 alternate.
At number 10 is Tigra, a superhero who's basically a giant talking cat. Tiger. Personally, I'm a dog person, so it's easy to see why Tigra would be so underestimated. After all, she's hardly the most well-known feline superhero out there. Nevertheless, she's got all the cool feline powers, razor-sharp claws, agility like you wouldn't believe, and a tail that's more than just for show. All pretty generic, but there's one moment in the comics that truly made her stand out. See, Tigra once took down a Skrull who had all the powers of the Fantastic Four combined. Yeah, we're talking about a Skrull with stretchy abilities, fire powers, rock-hard strength, and invisibility. Like, forget the Fantastic Four, this dude was fantastic on his ones. And Tigra, she outsmarted and outpaced this Super Skrull in a face-off. Even when the Skrull had a speed boost from the Human Torch's fire, Tigra showed that she's the real speed demon here. Now, even though Tigra doesn't always hog the spotlight like some of the other big names in the Marvel Universe, she's still an Avenger, so while Tigra might not be on everyone's superhero lunchbox, she's definitely got the skills and the guts to hang out with Earth's mightiest heroes. At number 9 is Sunspot. Roberto da Costa, aka Sunspot, isn't your typical superhero. Not only does he have the whole rich guy thing going for him, but his powers are seriously cool too. He's basically a human solar panel able to absorb energy and turn it into super strength. Now, the moment when he faced off against the Red Hulk was legendary. Going toe-to-toe with a Hulk takes some serious guts. Sunspot's determination and his solar-powered might were on full display here. He launched a punch so strong, it actually drew blood from the Red Hulk. That's like leaving a dent in a brick wall by punching it. It's basically unheard of. Now, what makes him even cooler is the dude typically holds back from unleashing his full fury. In fact, he barely ever needs to throw punches at all. Sunspot usually relies on his charisma and brains instead of flaunting his powers. But when he does decide to unleash that solar strength, watch out, because there's a lot more to him than just his hefty bank account. If you're enjoying this video so far, please support the channel by pressing like, subscribing to Top 10 Nerd, and ringing that notification bell. At number 8 is Reptile. Reptile is a hero with some seriously cool but kind of underrated powers, transforming into dinosaurs. Like, you're in a fight and bam, you can morph into a T-Rex or a raptor. And that's pretty much Reptile's shtick, and it's super awesome. But what's even cooler is that it's gonna take a lot more than a flimsy extinction rock from space to take this dude down. Like, you thought meteors were scary? Try surviving a nuclear blast. Yeah, you heard that right. Apparently, that's where Reptile really shines. In Avengers Arena number 18, this guy survives a direct nuclear explosion. He walks out of it without a scratch, no radiation poisoning, nada. It's not something that just any superhero can boast about. Like, even big shots like Namor were impressed. But handling those dino forms is also quite tricky business. He risks losing control every time he switches into a dinosaur, which adds a hefty dose of risk to his superhero game. So while Reptile might not be headlining Marvel movies or comics, surviving a nuclear blast speaks volumes about his toughness. I mean, turning into dinos might not be as flashy as shooting lasers, let's say, but hey, he's got a serious resilience. Definitely a hero worth giving some more credit to. At number 7 is Speedball. You know, Speedball might not be the first hero that comes to mind when you think of Marvel track stars, but this guy has an incredible story worth talking about. See, back in the day, he was part of the New Warriors, a team that wasn't exactly grabbing the headlines like the Avengers or the X-Men. In fact, his team ended up becoming a bit satirical, with its final incarnation taking the form of a superheroed reality show, which doesn't quite sound so serious. But here's the thing, leading up to Marvel's Civil War, things got super serious for Speedball. His team faced off against this bad guy named Nitro, and let's just say they underestimated him big time, seeing as they may have been a bit more occupied with their show's ratings than actually taking down the bad guy, which was a major mistake. Nitro set off this insane explosion in Stamford that wiped out the entire city and everybody on the scene except for Speedball. Can you imagine? 600 people gone in a blink of an eye, including all of Speedball's superpowered pals. But this guy, his powers that involve bouncing around and soaking up energy, somehow managed to survive. At number 6 is Mimic. This guy's got the wild mutant ability called Power Mimicry, which means he can copy the abilities of not 1, not 2, but up to 5 different superhumans all at once. It's like having a superpower sampler platter. And it gets even crazier. Mimic isn't limited to just mutant abilities, because he could also mimic non-mutant powers like those of the Fantastic Four. Plus, after hanging out with these superpowered folks for a while, he can consciously switch up and choose which abilities to use on command. In Exiles number 14, Namor the Submariner is on a conquest to claim Latveria, and who steps up? None other than Mimic himself. And these two heavyweights go at it for nearly an hour, and ultimately, Mimic wins. Not only taking down Namor, but a whole army of Doombots all by himself. Some serious superhero muscle right there. As a member of an alternate universe Exiles team from Earth 12, he doesn't nearly get the same recognition as Earth 616 heroes, but it doesn't make him any less powerful. At number 5 is Nova. Sam Alexander is the second incarnation of Nova, taking up after his father after discovering the Nova helmet and using its powers to protect the galaxy. At face value, he sounds kind of generic, especially with his supernova strength and speed, especially since he's overshadowed by his dad so often. But Nova is arguably much more powerful because the kid just can't seem to catch a break. In the final issues of Avengers vs. X-Men, he goes toe-to-toe with Cyclops. And if you think that's impressive, wait till I tell you that Cyclops was imbued with the Phoenix Force. And believe it or not, this kid freaking won. That's like a David and Goliath moment right there. At number 4 is Aurora. Ever heard of Aurora? She's this awesome, super fast hero with some seriously underrated powers. Sure, her twin brother Northstar gets a lot of attention, but Aurora's abilities are top-notch too. In a scene from X-Men number 191, Aurora and Northstar casually destroy X-Mansion, showing off their immense powers. But when Northstar's gotta take a moment to catch his breath, Aurora just doesn't hold back, and goes on the brink of wiping out the whole mutant crew single-handedly. She was a hair away from total domination. Now the thing is, she's got it all, speed, flight, and control over light, yet she's often sidelined compared to her brother. It's like everybody's sleeping on her massive potential. At number 3 is Speed. Speed, also known as Tommy Shepard, might not be on the A-list like Iron Man or Spidey, but he is seriously impressive. You see, Speed isn't just any speedster. He inherited his uncle Quicksilver's velocity, which automatically makes him one of the fastest folks in the Marvel Universe. As one of Scarlet Witch's 2 sons, he often gets overshadowed by his brother Wiccan. Now, obviously, Wiccan's powers are a lot more versatile, given that he does all things magic and Speed just kind of runs fast. But don't get it twisted, Wiccan's magic ain't got nothing on Speed's well, speed. Why, you ask? Well, you see, Wiccan can teleport. Now, one would think that means he could outpace his brother, and that was put to the test in Young Avengers Presents #3, where the two brothers raced against each other. Speed did the unbelievable, outpacing his teleporting brother in a race. Imagine that, outrunning somebody who can spontaneously manifest from one spot to another in an instant. That kind of speed is insane. It's moments like these where you wonder why Speed doesn't get more recognition. He's got the speed, the skills, and definitely the power to shake things up in the Marvel world. At number 2 is Tempo. You know, Tempo might not be the first superhero that pops in your mind when you think of Marvel, but trust me, she's one of the most badass time manipulators in the game. She used to hang out with the Mutant Liberation Front, rocking that iconic bullet-headed suit, but things got real interesting when she joined Krakoa. Suddenly, she had a shot at being a part of the X-Men crew, and that's when folks started noticing her. But the moment when Tempo truly proved herself came in the Marauder series. Until this point, Tempo was only known for slowing or stopping time, but here, she doesn't just stop time, she flips it like a pancake, sending time backwards by billions of years. Yeah, that's right, billions with a B. It's telling me that her first time traveling, she accomplished a feat of such magnitude that most of the time travelers couldn't even dream of. This isn't your average hero, she's like the time-traveling wizard of the Marvel Universe. I mean, sure, she might not have the same spotlight as other time travelers like Kang, but Tempo is proving herself to be a powerhouse you definitely don't want to underestimate. At number 1 is Hellion. Imagine facing off against one of the toughest superheroes out there, the Hulk. Yeah, Sunspot isn't the only one who stood up against the giant. Enter this dude. Despite being a young hero, he pulled off something insanely epic. In a comic called World War Hulk X-Men #1, he did the unthinkable. Using his telekinetic powers, he locked the Hulk's fist, giving his team a chance to regroup for battle. Yeah, you heard me right, y'all. A teenager managed to hold back the mighty Hulk's fists with his mind. Now, obviously that didn't last forever, but just managing to hold back the strongest force in the multiverse? Come on now, this guy should be a superstar. Now, he might not be as famous as some other Marvel heroes, but he's proven he's got some serious skills. Surviving tough situations and facing off against baddies like the Hulk shows he's definitely one to watch in the underrated superhero league.
Coming in at number 10 is Ace the Bat Hound. Of all the Bat family pets, Alfred the Cat, Bat Cow, Titus, Ace came first, and he wasn't just another pet of Damian Wayne. Not that there's anything wrong with that, I'm just saying. Now, Ace seems to be a name shared by many dogs who have worked with Bruce Wayne and his companions. When he first appeared in Batman number 462 in May of 1991, Ace was a shepherd-type doggo, and that's been the most popular breed for Ace the Bat Hound, usually a German shepherd. But he was also a Mastiff for a long while as well, with no real explanation. The most recent and popular German shepherd Ace the Bat Hound was an attack dog for the Joker and was not treated very well. Luckily, this very good boy was taken in by Alfred and the Bat family, and he became the bestest Bat boy ever. Yes, he did. Number 9, Batwoman. There have been a few different Batwomen over the years, but the one who will always stick in most fans' minds would have to be Kate Kane. Now, just to be clear, this is Batwoman we are talking about and not Batgirl. As a child of military parents, Kate has a soldier's mentality which just adds to her amazing fighting skills. She has cultivated over the years, not to mention a deep, intense desire to be the best she can be always. She received training from the Green Berets, Navy SEALs, and Special Air Service, and the villain Shadow also helped to train her to become a better hero. Following Batman's disappearance after the Infinite Crisis, Kate Kane assumed the Batwoman mantle and stepped in to become Gotham's protector. Kate has even displayed some superpowers. At one point, an injury left her able to detect electromagnetic fields, and in the Future Imperfect storyline, she even became a vampire. Number 8, Bluebird. I think Bluebird, or Harper Row, is looked over quite a bit when we talk about the Bat family, and honestly, it's kind of understandable. She did actually step down from her hero mantle in order to get her electrical engineering skills accredited, which honestly, that's the most real-world reason for someone to stop being a hero. But it was probably the smart thing to do, because Harper Row here is a whiz with electronics and electrical engineering. She's used her natural aptitude to help both her and her brother survive, as well as assisting Batman multiple times without him asking, improving upon some of his tech and helping out Red Robin on a few occasions using her homemade advanced tools. She's actually very cool, in my humble opinion, in her brief time being around. Number 7, Duke Thomas. Now, I feel like this might bother a few people, but honestly, this young blood still has to prove himself in my eyes. There is absolutely no doubt he is powerful. As one of the only metahumans on the Bat family roster, he's already naturally a cut above many others, but there are so many more that could bring him down without even needing superpowers. Powers don't always equal superiority on this family. Speaking of his powers though, Duke wields Ghost Vision, which he uses to perceive people and moments in the past and in the future. He also wields a cosmic awareness that extends into other realities and has even used the ability to travel across dimensions by light and shadow. Now, he originally started as part of the We Are Robin movement, but left and ended up making it on his own. Batman then took him in, helped train him, and then sent him out to be a part of the new Outsiders team alongside Black Lightning. Number 6, Lucius Fox. There are a few people that, without which, Bruce Wayne would not be where he is or be able to do the things that he does. Among this very select group would be Lucius Fox. First appearing in 1979, Lucius was the second in command at Wayne Enterprises. He is an incredibly adept businessman known throughout the world, but he is also, privately, Bruce Wayne's business manager, financial executive, and, not to mention, armorer. And if that weren't enough, when Bruce Wayne decided to resign, Lucius was promoted to CEO of Wayne Enterprises and the Wayne Foundation. His power definitely comes from the power of the company, his connection to Bruce, his sons, Luke and Jace, who is not a member of the Bat family, surprisingly, and he also does have a military background, so there is that if he's ever in like a little scuffle. It turns out that in DC, power isn't only about how big your muscles are. Number 5, Batwing. Luke Fox is not the first Batwing, but for a lot of us, he is definitely the coolest one. Being the son of Lucius Fox, Luke is a tech genius, graduating a year early with 2 degrees from MIT. His tech prowess really aids him as he has an incredibly advanced suit of armor that does a lot. For example, the suit has a full faceplate, retractable cape, and an interior skin that monitors vital signs and enacts first aid, like hardening around broken bones to hold the bone in place and administering painkillers. It gives Luke a form of invisibility, detective vision, holograms, it can access the GCPD computers, features gyroscopic assist, a terrain map, shock charges, a kinetic patch, anti-personnel plates, and just so much more. This is on top of Luke's training as an MMA fighter before his Batman training. Unfortunately, he just hasn't received a chance to shine in the spotlight yet and primarily works as a supporting character in most Bat family storylines. Number 4, Stephanie Brown. I feel like there are a lot of mixed feelings on Stephanie Brown out there. She has had an interesting history as a member of the Bat family. Originally, Stephanie fought against her father, the villain Cluemaster, under the vigilante name Spoiler. She would usually fight alongside Tim Drake Robin, and they had a bit of a relationship going on the side. Now, Batman eventually trained her up some, and when Tim was forced to step down, thanks to his own father, Stephanie even took up the title of Robin. But this was pretty short-lived, as she actually did not make a very good Robin, constantly disobeying orders and pursuing criminals on her own, which eventually led to her downfall. She ended up in the hospital, and it was really questionable if she would even pull through. Luckily though, she did survive and even went on to succeed Cassandra Cain, becoming the 3rd Batgirl. Now, the two of them, Cassandra and Stephanie, are the duo known as the Batgirls. Number 3, Huntress. Like a lot of the Bat family superheroes that we have already talked about, there have been a few versions of Huntress. The original was Helena Wayne, the daughter of both Bruce Wayne and Selina Kyle, and that character was loved. Unfortunately though, that character belongs to what is known as Earth 2, which is essentially the world of the original DC heroes, but she has not remained the Prime Earth's Huntress. Instead, we now have Helena Bartonelli. Well, sort of. We also have a Helena Wayne, but she's from an alternate future of Prime Earth. Are you confused? Because so am I. Let's just talk about Bartonelli. The only surviving member of the Bartonelli crime family, Helena has dedicated her life to a vendetta on crime after her family was wiped out by being a part of said crime. She was actually incredibly ruthless, very much willing to take the lives of criminals, which brought her and Batman to odds on a few occasions. But with that famous determination, Batman was eventually able to sway her way of thinking just a tiny bit. She was also done really well in the Birds of Prey movie, so definitely check that out if you haven't already. Number 2, Azrael. Another hero title with multiple bearers. This time though, it's a little different. The title of Azrael belongs to the chosen warrior of the Sacred Order of St. Dumas, cloned and enhanced, subconsciously trained and conditioned, and raised to be a perfect soldier. The most famous, and the one I'm going to talk about today, is John Paul Valley. Once he became Azrael, Valley had encountered both Bruce and Alfred died in Switzerland, saving them and actually abandoning his own order for Bruce Wayne's moral values, and he went back to Gotham with both of them. He impressed Bruce Wayne so much within his time that when Bruce eventually had his back broken by Bane, it was Valley who Bruce chose to continue the Batman name. Fortunately, this didn't go too well, as he lost his grip on reality and fell from grace. But he is an incredibly cool and capable character who has arguably gotten much better on the more recent Prime Earth. Number 1. Ghostmaker. Minkoa Khan, Ghostmaker, is essentially Bruce Wayne's rival from his formative years into becoming Batman. Kind of like how in Pokemon games you always have a rival who you hate but kind of respect because they always challenge you and help you improve. Ghostmaker trained with a large number of the same mentors that taught Bruce Wayne, and it's arguable that Ghostmaker is actually equal to Batman. The difference between the two is mainly in ideologies. For starters, Ghostmaker is kind of a psychopath. Bruce Wayne is not exactly psychologically sound, but he has a strong moral code, whereas Ghostmaker fights crime as if it's a kind of sport, and he has absolutely zero qualms with taking someone permanently out of the picture. Operating mostly in Southeast Asia, he constantly tried to get Bruce to see things from his point of view, which eventually led the two to agree to just stay out of each other's way. This guy is very much rated, but for most fans of Batman, learning about Ghostmaker will come as a surprise.
Number 10. Quasar. Quasar is Wendell Vaughn, a being of pure quantum energy. When armed with his quantum bands, he is even more powerful. The quantum bands allow Quasar to create constructs and shields. They also give him the power to absorb energy and complete quantum jumps, effectively teleporting. Quasar managed to survive in a fight against Annihilus, attempting to teleport away before he was destroyed, but only managing to do so at the last minute with his mind. For a time, he'd become trapped in the negative zone mentally, ceasing to have a physical form, passing on the mantle of Quasar for a time to Phi Lavelle and Nova's Richard Rider after. However, Quasar's defeat during Annihilation would seemingly only make him stronger, as after a time he managed to somehow regain his physical form, returning only to go on a journey to the Cancerverse, acting as a scout for his own universe. Existing as a being of pure quantum energy means that Quasar is a powerful hero to go up against, and might make him too powerful for the Marvel Cinematic Universe in the end. Good old Wendell. Number 9. Gladiator. Gladiator is one of those heroes whose powers are only limited by his own state of mind. Literally. Gladiator's confidence is directly tied to his power levels, and the more confident that he feels, the more unstoppable he becomes. For a time, Gladiator actually ruled his people as the Magister of the Shi'ar Empire, out in space. But more recently, he decided to step down, believing that Anarimani was needed on the throne, and relinquishing his place to Xandra. Gladiator himself is Kalark, a Strontian, who went through an enhancement process to make him worthy of the rank of Gladiator. He is immensely powerful, being super strong, fast, agile, invulnerable, and possessing a healing factor. He is capable of interstellar flight and is an incredibly gifted and experienced fighter. And friends, if you are liking this list and you want more lists like it, if you want that part 3, I don't know if we can do one, but I mean, there's a lot of characters in the Marvel Universe, so I'm sure we can. Be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. Number 8. Black Bolt. Black Bolt is the king of the Inhumans. We probably won't see him anytime soon in the MCU, not just because you'd then have to explain all about the Inhumans and what they're up to, and because he's super OP and can wipe out most opponents with just a whisper, but because we already tried to introduce the world to the Inhumans via their own television series, and it did not go well. Black Bolt, however, still has some pretty cool powers, and the Inhumans are a pretty cool bunch, if we did feel that they might be a good fit. We just might have to tone down Black Bolt's powers somewhat, or maybe also find like another way to have them? I don't know. He was considered powerful enough to take on Thanos, and he even survived a one-on-one battle against him in the comics. He was able to shatter Thanos' armor during their fight, though his powerful voice did not harm the Mad Titan directly. Rats. He also seemingly killed one of the most powerful Omega level mutants around, Vulcan, who was on part 1 of our list. However, this was later retconned to not have actually happened, as we later learned during Hickman's reign over the X-Books that Vulcan actually survived the fight. Apparently. He looked pretty dead. It looked like he was pretty dead, but he survived. How? We don't know. Number 7. Starbrand. Another cosmic hero who right now is in the care, I suppose, of the Avengers is Starbrand. Well, one of the Starbrands. There have been other Starbrands before in Marvel Comics, but this one is unique in the sense that she is just a little baby, or maybe more of a toddler now, actually. Either way, it would be pretty weird to see such a powerful young one fighting as a member of the Avengers, unless we're thinking of going the route of Baby Yoda, I guess, aka Grogu in Star Wars. Still, it seems unlikely. Whether it's little baby Selby or Kevin Connor, it's very unlikely that we're going to get either of the Starbrands out in the MCU. Their invulnerability, super strength, matter manipulation, energy manipulation, cosmic awareness, and healing powers may simply just be too much for the MCU to handle. Sorry, Starbrands. Number 6. Hyperion. Hyperion is known for being Marvel's version of a literal Superman. Sure, we have Sentry and Captain America, who are comparable in terms of their powers and their role, but Hyperion in the newest Heroes Reborn series seemed to be really exuding those Superman vibes. Here, Hyperion was the leader of the Squadron Supreme of America, an elite team of heroes who were also all kinda messed up. Hyperion himself seemingly had a god complex that perhaps was well earned considering what he was capable of. When all their enemies escaped their negative zone prison, Mark Milton as Hyperion was the first to respond, and he handedly took down pretty much everyone who got out, including Galactus, a version of Gladiator, a version of the Beyonder, a Giant Man version of Ultron / Evil Hank Pym, and a version of the Annihilation Wave. Granted, this Hyperion technically is an alt version, but either way you slice it, either way you dice it, any version of the hero is really too powerful and likely too similar to DC's Supes to make an appearance in the MCU. Number 5. Magik. Teleporters always rank high on my list of powerful heroes because I think teleportation is super OP, and Magik is definitely no exception there, although she is exceptional. So exceptional, in fact, if we didn't get to see her in the MCU, I personally would not be surprised. True, we did get to see Magik appear in the New Mutants film, but that itself was outside of MCU continuity and canon, so doesn't count, which is really unfortunate, as Anya Taylor-Joy was perfect in that role, and we likely won't get to see her take up the mantle again, which kinda bums me out. Magik is a member of the New Mutants who is also known for being not just a powerful teleporter, but magic wielder as the ruler of Limbo. This is where Magik teleports through to get where she is going. While in Limbo, she also becomes god level due to her attachment and relationship with the dimension. Magik also has a dark side known as Dark Child. While in her Dark Child persona, she becomes virtually unstoppable and generally a lot more evil. Number 4. Nova. It feels pretty unlikely that we'll ever get to see any version of Nova show up in the Marvel Cinematic Universe at this point. Why? Well, because the Nova Corps were seemingly wiped out by Thanos when he went after them for the Power Stone. It's believed that all of Xandar was decimated in his attack, which likely means that the Nova Corps, who were there, were some of the first people to go. Unless there was somehow, I guess, a lone survivor who could become Nova in the future, it seems very unlikely we'll see any kind of character attached to Xandar or the Corps. This could be just what Marvel Studios was hoping to eliminate the chances of, though, with this plot point, as all versions of Nova are considered to be pretty epically powerful, whether we're talking about Sam Alexander, Rich Rider, or Eve Bakian. Just all the Novas. They're just all pretty crazy. Number 3. Blue Marvel. So as much as I really want Adam Brashear to come to the MCU, there is also a concern many have around the fact that this hero might just be too powerful to appear in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, at least as he is in the comics. Maybe if we toned him down? Granted, we have Captain Marvel, and now we have Monica Rambeau, who's pretty crazy powerful. So I'm really hoping I'm wrong about this one. But still, there is Captain Marvel and Monica Rambeau, and then there is Blue Marvel, who's kind of operating on a whole other level, due to the fact that his powers are derived from antimatter, and the fact that he is basically an antimatter generator / reactor. And if you don't know, antimatter is like crazy powerful and crazy efficient in the Marvel universe. I don't know about antimatter in real life. I don't even know if there is antimatter in real life. I don't know about that science. Number 2. Eternity. Eternity is not a conventional hero and more a cosmic entity, but like the Living Tribunal, they are also generally seen as a force of good, so hence why I'm counting them on the list. Eternity is actually just below the Living Tribunal in terms of rank in the universe and is the personification of time. They exist alongside their sister, Infinity. Eternity is capable of manipulating time and space on a lucrative scale. They are immortal and are considered an integral part of the universe, existing alongside other major cons concepts, which are also represented by powerful entities. Number 1. One Above All. The One Above All isn't your typical hero, but they are a very powerful force of good in the MCU, like Eternity. One Above All is seen as the creator of the multiverse and all beings within it. They are basically the god of the multiverse, the ultimate creator. We talked about the Living Tribunal on part 1 of this list, who is seen as the ultimate bringer of justice, the ultimate judge throughout the Marvel multiverse, and the One Above All is actually believed to be the entity that the Living Tribunal works for. One Above All is believed to be all-powerful and omnipotent, getting involved in the matters of its creations only when its interference is truly needed. They were the one who made Adam Warlock take up the mantle as their new Living Tribunal as payment for restoring all of reality after it was destroyed, which seems like a fair trade. They're like, hey, Adam Warlock, do this job and have lots of power, and I will return reality. Just come work for me, you know? I need a new Living Tribunal. You know how it is when the Living Tribunal dies. Actually, I don't know how that is. Sounds like a very rare problem. Number 10. Wind. Wind is the name of the main character from the self-titled series, also of course named Wind. It comes from Boom Studios and was written by James Tynion IV with art by Michael Dalianos. Wind is a teenage hero who has always hidden the truth of his elven and magical heritage as a weird blood. His heritage grants him great power he's been hiding from his whole life in an attempt to fit in, being made to believe that magic is dangerous and basically turns people into monsters, or in some other way corrupts them. When he becomes too old to hide his pointed ears and who he is any longer, he is forced to either try and change or embrace who he really is. And in order to protect his friends against those who would hunt both him and them down, Wind ultimately embraces his magical side, unleashing powerful abilities. Wind has wings, can fly, and can communicate with forest-like spirits or sprites. He also has, like many other teen heroes, the power of friendship, which usually means he ends up making friends with powerful allies. I would say if you love the world of Avatar, you might also end up falling in love with both the character Wind and his series. It reminds me of Avatar, at least, in like the best way. Number 9. Lord Fanny. Lord Fanny is Hilda Morales, who was born as a boy but raised as a girl. She's a transsexual woman and one of the first trans heroes in comics. Lord Fanny was raised as a girl by her grandmother because only women in their culture could become witches, and her grandmother was a powerful witch who wanted to pass on her knowledge and power to Fanny. Although Fanny herself did choose to be a girl, if that makes sense. Lord Fanny is a member of the Invisibles team and was created by writer Grant Morrison and artist Steve Yoel. The Invisibles was a comic series that existed as part of DC's Vertigo imprint back when it was around. I miss Vertigo so much. The series began in 1994, and in issue 13 we'd learn more about Lord Fanny's origins and her very tragic backstory. Lord Fanny's such a cool character. And friends, before we move on to the next spot, if you are loving this list and you want to learn about even more cool, lesser known indie heroes, be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. Number 8. Quantum and Woody. You may have heard of Valiant's character Bloodshot, who recently got his own solo film, but what about all of their other superheroes? Quantum and Woody is a series and superhero duo from Valiant Comics. It was inspired by the superhero team-up series Power Man and Iron Fist, but is a lot more bizarre. The series itself was written by Christopher Priest, with art actually by the artist who did Power Man and Iron Fist. Pretty cool. Quantum and Woody are adoptive brothers who, after years of being estranged, are brought back together when their father mysteriously dies. While trying to figure out what really happened to him, they stumble upon superpowers. The catch? They must touch their power bands at least once every 24 hours to not only keep their powers, but also keep from losing their lives as well, as they would then no longer exist if they didn't touch their band. Quantum's powers are more defense-based, while Woody's are more offensive. Oh, and they also kind of have an animal sidekick, Vincent Van Gogh, who is even more bizarre than he already sounds. Just trust me. I don't want to spoil anything, but Vincent Van Gogh. What a goat. Number 7. Josephine. More commonly referred to as Jo, Josephine is the main character and hero of the Fatale series. More commonly referred to as Jo, Josephine is the main character and hero of the Fatale series, which comes to us from Image Comics. Fatale is a supernatural noir-style comic created by the brilliant team-up of writer Ed Brubaker and artist Sean Phillips. Seriously, I love these two together. Some might argue that Jo isn't really a hero, as she's a little bit selfish, but in focusing on uncovering the mysteries of her own power and in trying to save herself, she does inevitably save others. in the long run at least. There are a lot of people that end up being sacrificed along the way in order for Jo to stand a chance in defeating her enemies in the end. And also there are just straight up people being sacrificed along the way by her enemies who are attempting to track her down. So yeah, she kinda also gets a lot of people killed, but you know, it's not her fault. Jo's powers allow her to control all men who gaze upon her, with them being irresistibly attracted to her no matter who they are and no matter if she wants to influence them or not. Unless of course they are able to protect themselves against her influence with extremely powerful magic, which we only see from a couple characters really in the series. In other words, her power is pretty freaking strong. The only downside here, which is kind of the crux of it all, is that she can't fully control her powers. That is, she can't turn them off when she wants to, which ends up causing a lot of problems for Jo along the way, but I won't spoil any of that. Anyways, if you haven't read Fatale, it's now, I think, it's gonna be 10 years old soon, so go and read it, hurry up! Came out I think in 2012. That's when it started. Number 6. King Mob. King Mob is the leader of the Invisibles. He was once a horror writer who wrote under the pen name Kit Morrison. As the series The Invisibles is created by Grant Morrison, Mob is believed to be sort of a fictional stand-in for Morrison himself. King Mob's legal name was Gideon Starozowski, and he struggles with his alter persona, especially troubled by how violent he, as King Mob, can be. King Mob is not only a leader who wields power in that sense, because he's a leader, but also has experience with firearms and weapons, is a skilled martial artist and fighter, is psychic, can time travel, and employs the use of chaos magic. So lots of cool things that he can do. Also, if you haven't read The Invisibles, it is really trippy. Go read it. If you like The Matrix, you'll probably like The Invisibles. If you like The Matrix and if you like Doom Patrol, which of course is also Grant Morrison. Not The Matrix, Doom Patrol. Number 5. Laura Wilson / Persephone. Laura Wilson is the main character of the Wicked and the Divine series from Image Comics. The series was created by writer Kieran Gillen and artist Jamie McKelvey. In this story, gods come to life cyclically, being kinda reincarnated. This is known as the recurrence. Laura herself is obsessed with the gods and the pantheon, who are all of course re-emerging at the time. She wants nothing more than to be a god herself. At least that is what she thinks she wants, until her wishes kind of come true. She is revealed to be Persephone, who is believed to be the final god to return during the recurrence. As Persephone, she can summon plants and vines and control them. She also seems to have some kind of control or influence over the underworld. Laura can also create fireballs and reveal to others past events, summoning visions of the past even if she was not present for those events. Number 4. Sludge. Sludge is a hero or anti-hero who comes to us initially from Malibu Comics and was created by writer Steve Gerber and artist Aaron Lopresti. Sludge was once Frank Hogue, a dirty NYPD police officer who accepted bribes in exchange for favors when it came to drug dealings. He was ordered by the crime boss he worked for, John Paul Marcello, to kill another likely dirtier cop. When Frank refused Marcello's request, Marcello had him killed instead. After being shot, a grenade went off, knocking him into a bucket of chemical waste. Who put that chemical waste there? The waste would merge with him after he was dumped into the sewers, turning him into the super heroic monstrosity Sludge. Sludge possesses a healing factor and super strength. He could also kill or mutate his opponents with just a touch. Kinda turns them into sludge. It's pretty dark, really. Number 3. Radiant Yellow. We don't know that much about the newest Radiants, but we do know that they seem interested in protecting innocent people from whatever craziness is currently going on. Okay, hard to keep talking about all of this Radiant Black series without spoiling anything, but once again, I'm gonna try my best. Radiant Yellow appears to be an older gentleman, and as far as I know, we don't really know his name yet. What we do know is that each Radiant seems to have their own power set. At least that's what we're being led to believe by the story and the imagery used. It hasn't exactly all been laid out yet, which is honestly kind of what makes this series so much fun. There's so much we don't know. The mystery of it all. Radiant Yellow, however, seems to have powers based in perhaps light manipulation. To me, that's what it looks like the force blasts that they emit are based in, and it also looks to me like they can perhaps manipulate light to create illusions. That's just based on the imagery that's surrounding them in the comics. Like the other Radiants, Yellow isn't too experienced and doesn't seem to understand the full extent of their powers just yet. Radiant Yellow Yellow comes to us from the Radiant Black series, which belongs to Image Comics and is written by Kyle Higgins, who, yes, was also the initial writer of the Power Rangers series, and it was also created by artist Marcelo Costa. Number 2. X-O Manowar. Valiant Comics actually has a whole stable and universe filled with supers, including this one here, X-O Manowar. X-O Manowar is actually the name of the sentient armor that is tied to our hero in this series, Auric of Dacia, a Visigoth from the 5th century AD. Auric would end up being abducted by aliens and enslaved for years before he managed to escape. Auric learned of where his captive's armory was kept and basically ended up getting there and then getting the X-O Manowar suit. He then bonded with the suit and used that advanced tech to escape his captors. However, due to interstellar travel, by the time he arrived back on Earth, it was now the 20th century, basically modern day. Eric would have to adjust to this very different world, and along the way would meet other superheroes from the Valiant universe. That's right, there's not just 2 more, there's a whole bunch of them. X-O Manowar is a character created by writers Jim Shooter, Steve Englehart, and as well as artists Bob Layton and Barry Windsor-Smith. Number 1. Black Hammer. Black Hammer is Joe Weber, the title character of the Black Hammer series, written by Jeff Lemire with artwork by the amazing Dean Ormston. The Black Hammer series was made to be completely different from other more traditional superhero comics, but if I did have to compare Black Hammer to anyone from that more conventional world, I would liken him to Thor myself. Joe Weber inherited the hammer and powers of the former Black Hammer when he died, being transported to the realm of New World as soon as he himself had picked up the fallen hammer. There he learned that he was meant to become the new Black Hammer, replacing the fallen one as Starlock's new and most powerful warrior in the fight against Starlock's evil twin, the Anti-God. While being the title character, Black Hammer isn't actually the main character of this series. As we learn near the end of issue number 1, Black Hammer sacrificed himself to save the world from the Anti-God and keep his fellow superheroes and friends alive. But what really happened to him, and just how and why are his teammates now seemingly trapped in the timeless and kinda eerie town of Rockwood? Well, to find out, you'll have to read on, true believers. But honestly, you should just go read Black Hammer because it's pretty great. Everyone go read all the Black Hammer things. It's like a whole universe now.
In at 10, Tony Stark. Wilson Fisk's men attempted to kill Anthony Stark in order to silence his drunken singing, forcing Sheriff Rogers to intervene and save his life. Tony Stark later donned the suit of battle armor to save the life of Red Wolf. However, this suit looks more like a train than a battle mech suit, and in all honesty, it's the perfect combination of these two things. First appearing in 1872 number 1 from 2015, this version of the Iron Man armor is one that I want to see someone cosplay because holy damn, this look is based off the original Iron Man suit, and like, you know, the one Tony Stark built in a cave with a pile of scraps. Yeah, it's that one, but make it dark steampunk basically. But by steampunk I also mean steam engine. Well, combustion engine. I don't know much about trains. You know the train that Marty and Doc used to get the DeLorean up to 85 and then back to 1985 and Back to the Future Part 3? Yeah, that, but an Iron Man suit. I feel like the Tony from 1972 was the one who made that train fly and time travel. I feel like he was the one that Doc went to. In a 9, Gazer Beam. Simon J. Palladino, also known as Gazer Beam, is a minor character in The Incredibles. He only briefly appears in the film alive, but his disappearance and death really is what sets the events of the movie into motion. Gazer Beam was a member of the superhero team known as the Phantasmics, but conflicts with Everseer led him to leave the team, and he soon joined with the Thrilling Three as their new leader upon the death of Dynaguy, which he also later left. He appeared alive at the wedding of Elastigirl and Mr. Incredible, but during the superhero ban, Gazer Beam was an activist for superhuman rights, wanting the ban on supers to be revoked. 15 years later, he would be one of the most recent victims of the Omnidroid, with Bob having noticed his disappearance becoming a story in the newspaper. His final act before dying though was to use his powers to carve Kronos on the cave wall in which he was hiding, in the hopes that someone would discover it and put an end to Syndrome's evil schemes. An act that was really what made the Incredibles able to stop Syndrome's scheme and save the day, since without it Bob wouldn't really have learned what the mission was. And yes, I used a character from The Incredibles on this list because he was a superhero in the past. deal with it. And it ate Stardust the Super Wizard. However, this is a case of a superhero forgotten in the past, so another use for the term from the past. Stardust the Super Wizard is a fictional superhero from the golden age of comics who originally appeared in American comic books published by Fox Feature Syndicate, and first appeared in Fantastic Comics #1 in 1939. Stardust the Super Wizard was featured in 16 issues of Fantastic Comics, and this was before superheroes were really trying to be better than criminals, as Stardust would basically kill all of his enemies in various ways with his wide array of powers. And when I say wide array of powers, I mean it. This guy has about as many powers as a Lantern Corps, if not more. Superhuman strength, speed, durability, and endurance, vast knowledge of interplanetary science, master of space and planetary forces, skilled detective, formidable brawler, accelerated perception, extrasensory perception, augmented respiration, interplanetary flight, indestructibility, telepathy, transportation, metamorphosis, transmogrification, telekinesis, selective omniscience, which is awesome, and luminous skywriting. And then throw on whatever other powers he needs to have thanks to the story, because he's a freaking wizard and it's 1939. This, with the combination of just offing people he didn't like, makes him absolutely nuts. But I love it. And at 7, Dark Knights of Steel. Coming in November of this year, Dark Knights of Steel will basically be DC meets Game of Thrones. The series is written by Tom Taylor and takes place in a medieval fantasy world, where a spaceship crash lands from a doomed planet. So not only will the Dark Knight be here, but so will Superman and Wonder Woman, along with Harley Quinn, Black Lightning, and more. Tom Taylor told Entertainment Weekly, quote, "I've spent the last 2 years creating a new epic fantasy universe for DC Comics, and Dark Knights of Steel is an absolute dream come true. Despite being the writer of the DC horror series Deceased, I am actually a huge fantasy fan, combining two of my favorite things, DC superheroes and high fantasy. It's my absolute happy place, and honestly, I couldn't agree more. I love medieval stuff. It's why I love Skyrim and Game of Thrones, and why my name is the Cheese King. I love fantasy stories, and I can't wait to sink my teeth into this one, especially when in the preview we got for this series, we can see what is in essence a character sheet base, or like character stats for Superman. So if they include one of these with every issue, you can have a real DC based fantasy Dungeons and Dragons game with like official stats. And that sounds f***ing awesome. Who do you hope shows up in this series? I'm hoping to see the Flash, but like medieval, but like, hey, you let me know your thoughts down below. And at 6, Argon Bat. Argon Bat is a Japanese superhero created by Suzuki Ichiro and Takeo Nagamatsu in 1931, who originally debuted in a Kamishibai, which is a paper theater. Argon Bat is considered by some to be the world's first superhero, and is a precursor to later superhero characters such as the Japanese Prince of Gamma, as well as well-known comic book characters like Superman and Batman. Argon Bat was created by 16-year-old Takeo Nagamatsu and 25-year-old Suzuki Ichiro in 1931. And the two were inspired by drawings of mythological characters in Tokyo's Unio Royale Museum to create a new hero based on science rather than mythology. Argon Bat is a being from ancient Atlantis who was sent forward in time 10,000 years to battle evil forces threatening the present day. He has a golden skull-shaped head, wears a green and white swashbuckler outfit with a high-collared red cape, and carries a rapier. His superpowers include superhuman strength, invulnerability, and the ability to fly. Plus, I mean, he was sent 10,000 years in the future, so if that's not the past, then I don't know what is. Halfway through into number 5, Danny Phantom. Young Danny Fenton, he was just 14 when his parents built a very strange machine. It was designed to view a world unseen. That realm being the ghost dimension, aptly named the Ghost Zone. When it didn't quite work, his folks, they just quit. Then Danny took a look inside of it. There was a great big flash and everything just changed. His molecules got all rearranged. And then this 14-year-old kid gained the ability to transform into a human or into a ghost. Danny Phantom is one of my all-time favorite cartoons, and it helped to shape me into who I am today. So, of course, I'm going to include it as a superhero from the past, because he's from my past, okay? That's right, I found a way to work it in. While in his ghost form, Danny has multiple abilities, including flight, invisibility, intangibility, and to possess people at first. However, as the series goes on, he gains more abilities, such as ghost rays, which are bolts of energies from his hands, cryokinesis, and his ghostly wail, which he learns sooner than he's supposed to, thanks to a version of himself from the future, who he ends up fighting in the 2-part hour-long episode titled Ultimate Enemy, in which present Danny gets dragged to the future, where he's turned evil thanks to combining with his primary adversary and uncle, Vlad Plasmius. So he also got dragged into the future, thus meaning that he was from the past. Boom! You looking for this? In it for Phantom Rider. Carter Slade was born and raised in Ohio in the mid-19th century, along with his brother Lincoln. Eventually, Carter decided to move out west to the new territories in order to become a school teacher at a new settlement in Montana. However, he came across a group of people slaughtering helpless homesteaders. Though he fought bravely, Carter was eventually defeated, shot multiple times, and slowly dying from his injuries. He was brought to a native medicine man called Flaming Star, who had many years before seen a shooting star that brought with it a special dust. Flaming Star took this as a sign that a champion would one day be sent to them to fight injustice. He believed that Carter was this champion and gave him most of his costume along with the dust, which Carter used to make the rest of it and tame a white horse he called Banshee. However, Carter would eventually die while trying to save his brother Lincoln from a cave-in, which results in Lincoln taking over the mantle of Phantom Rider. Basically, it's Ghost Rider from the Old West. And I think it's without the demon. Getting close to the end in number 3, Captain America. After being a kid from Brooklyn who just wanted to help, Steve Rogers volunteered for an experimental procedure to make super soldiers to aid the Americas during World War II. However, after the experiment was successful, the rest of the equipment was destroyed along with the genius behind it. However, after falling from an experimental drone plane into the North Atlantic Ocean, he spent decades frozen in a block of ice in a state of suspended animation. Quite literally being a superhero from the past, even in real world standards, since this was also his reintroduction into the Marvel Comics Silver and Bronze Age. I think we all know this story at this point thanks to the absolute success of the MCU, but it's still easy to forget that Cap was originally from the 40s until comic books were on the rise again in the 60s, which is really interesting because, like, in the most literal sense of the word, Captain America is a hero from the past, and is probably the most fitting character for this list for that reason. But there are a couple more that I wanted to talk about, so I put him at number 3. Penultimately, in at number 2, Black Knight. Marvel Comics' first Black Knight, Sir Percy of Scandia, first appeared in the medieval adventure series Black Knight numbers 1-5 from Atlantic Comics, the 1950s precursor to Marvel Comics, and this ran in 1955. The original Black Knight is Sir Percy of Scandia, a 6th century knight who serves at the court of King Arthur as his greatest warrior and one of the Knights of the Round Table. While the modern Black Knight seems to be making an appearance in the Eternals, the original Black Knight was recruited by the wizard Merlin and adopts a double identity. He pretends to be totally incompetent until changing into the persona of the Black Knight. As the Black Knight, Percy wields the Ebony Blade, which Merlin forged himself from a meteorite. The modern version, known as Dan Whitman, is the original Black Knight's descendant and the supervillain Black Knight's nephew. He inherited the mystical Ebony Blade that carried a curse and took the Black Knight mantle to help restore honor to it. And I gotta say, it's a really weird family dynamic that you got going on. This family reunions must be really awkward. Finally, in at number 1, Paul Manning. In the year 5700, we see a hero known as Paul Manning, who would appear whenever the world was in danger. However, it was revealed that this Paul Manning was in fact the Green Lantern known as Hal Jordan, who would be brought to the year 5700 by the Solarians. They would also wipe his mind and clear his memories to implant him with new ones, which is where Paul Manning came from. It was a created identity by the Solarians to get Hal to save them whenever they were having issues, or maybe if a really important cat was stuck in a tree. Eventually though, after being brought to the future many times, Hal ended up subconsciously creating an evil doppelganger of himself who took over the Paul Manning identity, and went on to terrorize the Solarians. He would then be defeated by actual Hal and would be converted into a functioning member of society. However, this was also all pre-Crisis, and after the collapse of the multiverse this no longer applies to the main continuity version of Manning. But it's still pretty interesting nonetheless. Like, imagine being pulled into the future and not even knowing it. By that logic, any of us could be from any point in the past, and we just wouldn't know.
Number 10 is Atom Smasher. No, I'm not talking about Atom Smasher from Cyberpunk lore. I'm talking about the lesser known Atom Smasher, as in the atomic particle smasher, aka Robert Julian Rothstein, who was a big deal in the DC world, literally, not figuratively. Picture this, he's a hero who could grow super big, towering over trees, and packing a punch that could knock anybody out. Now, despite his mega size and power, he didn't get the spotlight he deserved in many big storylines. But there was one storyline where he did in fact prove himself. Atom Smasher did something huge, literally and figuratively this time, by kicking a tyrant out of power in Kahndaq. Leading a team of rebel do-gooders, he flexed his muscles, showing bravery and fought for what he thought was right. His powers on display played a big role in taking down the bad guys, and his actions reshaped the DC universe by returning control to the people of Kahndaq. Atom Smasher might not have been in the headlines all the time, but when he stepped up, he changed the game for the better. At number 9 is Saturn Girl. Saturn Girl is a seriously underrated superhero in the DC universe. She's all about telepathy, a superpower that lets her read minds and communicate without even speaking. But despite her awesome abilities, she's often overlooked, just like the rest of her crew, the Legion of Superheroes. The team doesn't always get the credit it deserves, always living in the shadow of bigger superhero groups like the Justice League or Justice Society of America. But here's the kicker. Saturn Girl once saved the entire timeline. Yeah, you heard that right. A girl who just communicates with her thoughts saved the multiverse. She used her mind mojo to gather every Legion member across different universes to take down the big bad guy, the Time Trapper. Without her, who knows what kind of chaos would have happened. Saturn Girl might not be as famous as Superman or Wonder Woman, but her brain power packs a serious punch when it's used correctly. She's a legend in her own right, even if not everybody knows about it. If you're enjoying this video so far, please support Top 10 Nerd by pressing like, subscribing to the channel, and ringing that notification bell. It helps the video get pushed out to more people, and I would really appreciate it, so do that. Thank you very much. Moving on to number 8, we have Mr. Terrific. Michael Holt, also known as Mr. Terrific, doesn't just juggle lasers like they're nothing. I mean, this guy's got brains and brawn. He's all about saving the day and helping people out, but he doesn't get the credit he deserves. This dude's a top-notch genius and can do some seriously amazing things with his smarts. I'm talking about being the big shot in the Justice Society of America and being labeled as the smartest member ever. Mr. Terrific isn't just book smart though, he's a wizard with tech too. He pulled off some mind-blowing stuff against Brother Eye and saved Selina Kyle's life by putting her heart right where it belonged. Bottom line, Mr. Terrific doesn't always get the spotlight often, but when he does, it's because he's using that epic brain of his to pull off some seriously epic moves. At number 7, The Question. Question is an often overlooked figure, especially the version portrayed by Renee Montoya. Renee, a skilled detective, swaps the comfort of accolades for the shadows of vigilantism, seeking to create genuine change. Despite her remarkable career, the Question remains in obscurity, deprived of the rightful recognition she deserves. Not all strength comes from overt displays of power, as we've just seen. Renee embodies the strength through resilience. After grappling with the toll of her superhero life on her mental well-being, she'd stepped away from the role. But when duty called, she did not hesitate to don the Question's identity once more. Her willingness to confront personal struggles and yet rise to the challenge when needed showcases a different kind of fortitude. Her story emphasizes that strength isn't just about physical prowess. It's about determination to confront the inner battles and still stepped up to protect others when the call comes. At number 6, Vixen's one cool hero you might not have heard much about. She's in the Justice League, but hasn't got much attention as some other big names. What makes her special is how she taps into the powers of animals, like she channels their abilities thanks to this totem passed down through generations. Any animal she could think of, bam, she can manifest the strength of a lion or the speed of a cheetah, and so on and so forth. The latest Vixen, Marie McCabe, has done some seriously awesome stuff, like she became the boss of the Justice League. Leading the top squad of superheroes is kind of a big deal. Only a handful of heroes have ever done that, and like their names are Batman and Batman. And to get the thumbs up from Batman himself to take charge is pretty massive. It shows that she's not just tough, but smart and reliable too. It's like being the team captain of an all-star team. A ton of pressure, but also a big honor. At number 5 is Ragman. Ragman is seriously underrated in the DC universe. He's not in the spotlight much, but he is seriously powerful. Rory Reagan, the guy inside the Ragman suit, can control it like it's an extension of himself. This suit's not just a fashion statement, it's also a serious weapon. It protects Reagan and also kicks some serious bad guy butt. His suit's got this cool power that can absorb the souls of evil people. Pretty heavy stuff. Ragman isn't afraid to take on big bad demons. He once faced a whole fleet of demons and saved the Earth, which is definitely no small feat. Even though he did take a beating, he came out on top and really showed how brave and heroic he is. DC should totally give this guy more screen time, as he deserves to be up there with the big leagues like Superman and Wonder Woman. At number 4 is Spoiler. There's no spoilers, don't worry guys. The hero's name is Spoiler. Also known as Stephanie Brown, she might not ring a bell as loud as other big names in the Bat family, but she is a superhero worth knowing about. She didn't just follow in somebody else's footsteps, as she carved her own path. As spoiler, she stepped up big time, especially when facing off against a colossal baddie named Brother Eye. Now this villain here is no joke, like big league Justice level big. But Stephanie wasn't afraid to take him head on. When Brother Eye tried to mess things up using a different timeline, Stephanie didn't just freak out. Instead, she used that timeline to her advantage, brought heroes from that time to help her out. And if it weren't for her guts and quick thinking, things in the DC world might have turned out totally different. The next time you hear about Bat Family superheroes, don't forget to give some props to Stephanie Brown, aka Spoiler, because she's a real unsung hero in the DC universe. At number 3 is Killer Frost. Caitlin Snow, known as Killer Frost, doesn't totally get the spotlight she deserves, although she is kinda heavily featured on this channel. Initially seen as a bad guy, she's been trying hard to change that image. Imagine going from total baddie to trying to do the good stuff. It's a massive leap. Killer Frost wasn't just chilling out, pun intended, as a villain. She had to battle her own past and nature to become a hero. Now what's cool about her is the determination she showed. It's like fighting against the odds, clawing her way out of the dark side. The transformation from an icy antagonist to a legit Justice League member is pretty huge, and not everybody gets that chance. So yeah, Killer Frost might not be as famous, but she's definitely earned her stripes. She's proof that even the chilliest hearts can thaw out for the better. At number 2 is the Human Target. Christopher Chance, better known as Human Target, is a hero in the shadows of DC Comics. His superpower? Transforming into anybody to safeguard important folks. He also has awesome detective skills, which make him a top-notch problem solver. But what makes him truly stand out is his selflessness. He once shielded Bruce Wayne from Deadshot's deadly aim. But he didn't just save the day, he shielded Batman's secret identity too, using his face-swapping talents. Human Target's heroics go unnoticed. He's like this secret guardian angel for all the big shots, and yet few ever give him the applause he deserves. Imagine having the guts to confront a villain like Deadshot, risking your own life just to keep others safe. It's these unsung heroes like Human Target who deserve a spot in the limelight. And coming in at number 1 is Batwing. Luke Fox, as Batwing in DC Comics, is seriously underrated. Now he's one of those heroes who doesn't get enough credit because, well, I mean, Batman's got this big shadow covering everybody else in Gotham. But Luke, he's no sidekick, you guys. He's a force to be reckoned with. There was one time in the comics when Gotham was about to get nuked by the League of Assassins. Now Luke didn't just sit around twiddling his thumbs. No, he got right in the thick of it. I mean, sure, he got nabbed alongside Azrael, but that didn't stop him. After busting out, he used his smarts to defuse the bomb that would have wiped out all of Gotham. It's definitely top-tier hero stuff. It's a shame, really, that more folks don't really give Batwing the credit he deserves, given that, you know, he's hardly the most unique Bat character in all of DC. Yet, he's super awesome. He's not just another guy in a cool bat suit. He's got the brains, the guts, and the will to save the day when it counts the most. That pretty much wraps it up for today's video. As always, if there's an underrated hero in the DC universe that should have been included in this list, please feel free to let me know down in the comments. And hopefully, your suggestions will be included in the next iteration of this list.
And at 10, Cassandra Cain. Cassandra Cain is the 4th Batgirl. Born with the assassin David Cain and Lady Shiva as her parents, she was trained to become the perfect warrior. Her father deprived her of speech so that she would learn movement and physicality as her first language. Batman adopted her into the Batman family during No Man's Land to replace Helena Bertinelli as Batgirl. Cassandra would eventually turn her Batgirl costume over to Stephanie Brown and become a member of Batman Incorporated as Black Bat. Trained by her father to be the ultimate weapon, Cassandra was not taught to speak. Instead, her father relied mostly on actions to communicate with her. He also cut her off from the outside world, only exposing her to anything or anyone other than him when absolutely necessary. As a result, the parts of her brain normally used for speech and language processing were trained so that she could read other people's movements and body language to recognize their thoughts without verbal communication, and predict with uncanny accuracy their next move in a fight. This also caused her brain to develop learning functions different from most, so it's like a form of dyslexia that hampers her ability to talk, read, and write. And at 9, Beast Boy. Beast Boy's parents, Mark and Mary Logan, were geneticists that would travel the jungles of the world to study their wildlife. Beast Boy was brought up in the jungles of Brazil, Africa, India, and several other places. The Logans became particularly interested in a rare species of green monkey, which honestly I understand. But the day they finally found them, something terrible happened. Beast Boy was bitten by one of these monkeys and contracted a serious illness called Secudia. To save him, his parents attempted to cure him with a new serum, which bestowed him with his iconic shape-changing abilities. And as a side effect, his skin, hair, and eyes all turned green. Beast Boy was originally originally the youngest member of Doom Patrol, however revealed in Homecoming, Mentos' harsh discipline and less than encouraging attitude finally alienated him from his surrogate family, and he stuck out on his own. Looking for a new place to live, he came to Jump City, where he encountered Robin, Starfire, Raven, and Cyborg. Afterwards, the five formed a new team of their own, the Teen Titans. And it ate Aqualad. Operating as Aqualad by his king's side as the first leader of the Teen Titans, he briefly worked under deep cover as the loyal lieutenant of his father, Black Manta, to bring down the Light and their partner. Eventually, King Orin retired his heroic duties and Calder took over the mantle of Aquaman, joined the Justice League, and became their leader by July of 2018. In February 2019, he officially stepped down as their leader, and Aqualad eagerly expected to become a member of the Justice League alongside Speedy, Robin, and Kid Flash. However, when it became clear that that wasn't happening, he decided to accompany Robin and Kid Flash to investigate Cadmus Labs. There they found the Genomorph Project and Superboy, whom they liberated. Aqualad, Kid Flash, and Robin set off on an unsanctioned mission to protect CEO Selena Gonzalez from the League of Shadows, but despite their best efforts, Gonzalez still vanished. And at 7, Miss Martian. When she first came to Earth, Miss Martian was a bubbly, exceptionally sweet, polite, and caring individual, although occasionally shy young Martian girl who longed to fit in on Earth and become a member of a team. However, being from Mars and having never really interacted with humans before, she was frequently unfamiliar with Earth's customs. She felt especially uncomfortable with her telepathy, as on Mars it's the prime form of communication, but on Earth it's not really a thing. But she was also quite inexperienced, but eager to please. By 2016, she had become considerably more serious, but still retained her caring side. She's become more experienced and adept at using her powers, and isn't afraid to use extreme measures to exact information. As a shapeshifter, she can model her appearance to her desire, which is usually that of a green-skinned female humanoid based on Mary Logan as a teenager, with amber eyes and shoulder-length red hair. Though after 5 years she now keeps her hair shorter at length, but it still grows longer over the months, which she must be doing consciously, because she's a shapeshifter. It's because the hair won't naturally grow if you're just pretending it exists. So she has to be consciously slowly growing her hair, which is interesting to me. And at 6, Tara Markov. Also known as Tara, had manifested the ability to manipulate Earth. She can levitate Earth, manipulate its shape and configuration, like raising the floor to make a shield, or alter its state, like turn hard Earth into a substance similar to quicksand. So basically she's the DC version of an Earthbender. Tara was a child when her powers emerged. Markov's parents freaked out though and thought that she was possessed by evil. She was abandoned and forced to live in the streets eating out of dumpsters. So Deathstroke was contracted by Brother Blood, leader of Hive and the Church of Blood. He eventually wanted Deathstroke to capture all of the Teen Titans for him. Deathstroke heard of Tara Markov and her powers, and he devised a plan to use her as a spy and, if needed, a bargaining chip. He also went to Markovia and intervened in an attempted public execution. Tara was tied up to a vehicle and dragged around while the mob chanted for her death, calling her a witch and a demon. Deathstroke sliced the head off the man who was holding a gun to Tara's head, and she was later taken in as the latest member of the Teen Titans team. Halfway through in at number 5, Wonder Girl. Cassie Sandsmark was the second person to be called Wonder Girl, the first being Donna Troy. Cassie was the daughter of Dr. Helena Sandsmark and the Greek god Zeus. She spent most of her time at her mother's place of work, the Gateway City Museum of Antiquities, where she had a penchant for getting into trouble. She quickly befriended her mother's new employee, though, Wonder Woman, and was eager to help her. During a fight with a Doomsday clone and another battle with Decay, she created a costume and used magical acquirements, the Sandals of Hermes and the Gauntlet of Atlas to be exact, to help Wonder Woman, much to her mother's horror. Cassie later had the opportunity to ask Zeus for a boon and requested real superpowers. Zeus granted her request but gave Dr. Sandsmark the ability to deactivate them. Dr. Sandsmark, however, reluctantly accepted her daughter's wish to be a superhero and rarely, if ever, used this ability, and Artemis was assigned to be her teacher. Zeus giving her mom the ability to turn off those powers though is actually probably the most sensible thing someone has ever done in the DC universe, straight up. Good on you, Zeus, bro. This is the most sensible version of Zeus I think I've seen, at least in this instance. And in 4, Damian Wayne. Sometime after Batman became a public hero, he fought Ra's al Ghul and the League of Assassins. During his adventure, he met Raz's daughter, Talia al Ghul. The two young adults fell for each other, and after a brief fling, they conceived a child. Bruce was unaware of the child's conception though and returned to crime fighting for years. Talia, on the other hand, taking advantage of the hero's impressive genes, believed their child to be the perfect heir, and the child was born and given the name Damien. Talia then used the League's extensive scientific resources to inorganically speed up the child's aging, giving him the physiology of a 10-year-old in less than 5 years, which was also used as a plot device to make sense as to why he would be meeting his father. Eventually though, when Talia deemed that Damien was ready, she allowed him to go to Gotham and meet his father, the Batman. Batman was surprised to learn that he had a secret son with a supervillain, but sought to learn more about the boy anyway. Despite his intense training to become a remorseless assassin, Damien was sympathetic to his father's vigilanteism in Gotham and volunteered to become his next sidekick. Batman agreed and granted Damien the mantle of Robin, his fourth ward to use the name, which should already kind of indicate the path of this thing kind of takes there, Damien, so maybe not serve yourself up as a human sacrifice for character building purposes next time. Getting close to the end, at number 3, Kid Flash. Bartholomew Bart Allen is a speedster from the year 2056 and the grandson of Barry Allen. When he came to the past, he joined the team under the name Impulse, and after Wally West's death, he took on the mantle of Kid Flash. He later joined the Outsiders. But given the dire situation that his time is in, Bart is serious and slightly jaded, who was greatly appreciative of his extended family in the past. Whether accidental or intentional, Bart constantly spoils information for people about the future, such as revealing Robin and Nightwing's identities to Beast Boy, and that Iris West Allen was carrying twins. This was also adapted into the CW show The Flash, where Bart and Nora are actually Barry's kids instead of grandkids, and they take on the name of the Tornado Twins over Dawn and Dawn, since they don't exist. I guess Flash writers thought that was a little too much. Penultimately, in at number 2, Raven. Raven, also known as Rachel Roth, is a superhero with magical abilities and a prominent member of the Teen Titans. Raven is a tele-empathetic, and she can teleport, send out her soul self, which can fight, like physically, manifest as a force field, manipulate objects and others as like with telekinesis, and it can also act as Raven's eyes and ears away from her body. Raven was born the half-breed daughter of a human mother named Angela Roth and the demon overlord Emperor Trigon. Eventually, she learned that Trigon was planning to come to her dimension and vowed to stop him. She initially approached the Justice League, which they refused on the advice of Zatanna, who sensed her demonic parentage. In desperation, she reformed the Titans as the new Teen Titans to fight against her father. The team was eventually able to defeat Trigon and seal him in an interdimensional prison. However, Raven still had to fight her father's influence because he wasn't actually completely destroyed, so she was still part demon. Yeah. And finally, in at number 1, Superboy. Superboy, aka Con-El or Connor Kent, yeah, you know why I mentioned that, was a genomorph, a binary clone of Superman and Lex Luthor, and a founding member of the Young Justice team. On February 25th, 2019, Superboy had revealed himself to the world and left the team in order to become a member of the Outsiders. After he became engaged to Miss Martian, the couple traveled to Mars to prepare for their upcoming wedding, but he historically sacrificed himself to protect the Martians from a gene bomb. Before this though, Aqualad, Robin, and Kid Flash discovered the Genomorph Project and Superboy, whom they liberated. The 4 youths stood up to their mentors and declared that they were ready to prove themselves as heroes. While Batman considered their argument, Kid Flash and Superboy stayed with him. Together they faced the Terror Twins at the Central City Mall, and they formed a covert ops team where they were given their own headquarters in Mount Justice. And they were introduced to Miss Martian, which would ultimately lead to Superboy's death, so sorry bro.
Coming in at number 10, we've got Genie. We'll start with one that seems to cause some continuity clashes, but it's plenty entertaining anyway. Throughout the 2099 universe, we meet descendants and followers of heroes that made Marvel so famous. Great-grandchildren of classic heroes are all about, and oftentimes the original supers have died, disappeared, or become decrepit to fight crime. New folks come around to replace the old folks. It's the way of the world. However, in many Marvel stories, Doctor Strange manages to outlive all sorts of folks thanks to his magical abilities. This is not the case in 2099 though, as he's nowhere to be found. In his place is another person who goes by the name Strange, and this time it's a woman. Also known as Genie or possibly Sorceress Supreme, this magical mistress realized she had magical abilities and worked to perfect them on her own. Idolizing her older brother, she followed him one day and witnessed him being attacked by Skrulls. Attempting to scare them away, she tried to conjure an illusion of a Lovecraftian monster and ended up actually summoning an eldritch monstrosity. This didn't end up well for anyone, as she ended up accidentally killing her brother. Whoops. From there on, she underwent more training and started helping other heroes in various capacities. With all sorts of powers fueled by the mystic arts, she can do a whole lot of wicked things. From healing injuries to teleportation to casting sleep spells, she's got it all under control. Plus, she is immune to timeline distortions, which proves to be helpful quite often. So don't mess with Mademoiselle Strange. Coming in at number 9, Deadpool. Wade Wilson who? Well, actually it seems that Wade is indeed still around, but in 2099 his daughter Warda has taken up the mantle, and she seems to enjoy torturing him, which is interesting. Add in a mother who was once queen of the undead and you've got one hell of a mix of powers. She has Wade's regenerative powers as well as some possible vampirism from her mother's side. Absolutely wild. To make her potentially even more effective, she doesn't seem to share her father's sense of humor. Less goofing around, less cracking wise, and more violence. The weapon proficiency is still there too. Nice. Warda spends most of her time attempting to figure out where her mother is and eventually finds her true family, so good for her. Coming in at number 8, Moon Knight. Let's go, Moon Knight. In 2099, they're actually on the moon, and she's no longer Mark Spector, but an unknown individual with a totally secret identity. How cool is that? Wielding a bevy of powerful gadgets and weapons, Moon Knight acts as the server of vigilante justice on the moon-based city of Adelan. Stalking the night, or whatever version of night is on the moon, she keeps the many Inhumans who call that place home as safe as she can. After accidentally wandering into the forbidden citadel of the Watcher, she convinces Uatu to let the Fantastic Four constructs to stick around longer until they've lived up to their former lives. Good on you, Moon Knight. Coming in at number 7, we've got Ghost Rider. To be honest, I'm a little disappointed that Nick Cage isn't the Ghost Rider in 2099. This implies that Hollywood's most controversial leading man doesn't make it until then, and that's just a shame. Thankfully, Ghost Rider is still wicked cool in the future and comes packing some new weapons and powers. Gone are the days that Ghost Rider is a literal magical skeleton flying around on his flaming motorcycle. In 2099, Vengeance got an update. Kenshiro Zero Cochran, computer hacker extraordinaire, ends up with his mind inside of an insanely powerful robot body. A Cybertech 101 warbot to be exact. And this robot is jam-packed with all sorts of futuristic weaponry, from eye lasers, to a hand that can transform into a whole bunch of weapons, to a retractable chainsaw embedded in his arm. Oh, and also a 50 caliber gun and grenades. Still a weapon for vengeance though, Ghost Rider manages to project the image of a flaming skull, just like the OG, using his holographic capabilities. Now that's how you future-proof your superhero. Coming in at number 6, Hulk. Our futuristic gamma-fueled beast is definitely a contender for strongest ever. However, unlike the original Hulk, he's not quite immortal. I won't get into the nitty-gritty here, but even a base power higher than the first Green Giant isn't enough to keep you alive against all odds. Too bad too, because this is a really cool reimagining of a classic hero. In 2099, a movie producer named John Eisenhart decides he wants to do a movie about the Knights of Banner. This group worships Bruce Banner like a god and tends to move around all over the place. When Eisenhart finds out he can't get the rights to their story, he turns them into the police, but feels guilty afterwards. He tries to find a way to help them out, but gets caught in the blast of a gamma bomb, turning him into a brand new green monstrosity. He's got more base strength than the original Hulk, sharp teeth and claws useful for ripping and tearing, and even holds onto his human intelligence once transformed. Able to lift up to 150 tons and leap hundreds of feet in a single bound, this version of the Hulk is a force to be reckoned with. Coming in at number 5, we've got Thor. This might come as a bit of a surprise, but in the future, a lot of people worship superheroes, and a lot of the time, those who revere these supernatural figures are interested in attaining these godly powers for themselves. In 2099, a subset of people have decided to give themselves to Thor, mind, body, and spirit. Known as members of the Church of Thor, or Thorites, they all have the hallmarks of many other major religions, down to the places of worship and religious leaders. Cecil McAdams was a reverend of the Church of Thor, and was actually chosen to take up the mantle of the Norse god of thunder himself. Through technological advances and a whole lot of self-deception, McAdams ended up with almost identical powers to the god that he worshipped. This resulted in some less than stellar mental issues though, as he went a little power crazy and tried to rid an entire city of mortals. Coming to number 4, we've got Exodus. Born as Bennett du Paris back in the 1300s, this mutant is all about changing up the world order. He has and always will believe that mutants should be in charge of the world, with humans as the inferior race. This was true before 2099 and remains true in said futuristic world. Showing up after a long sleep, Exodus attempted to force his rule upon X Nation. They weren't too happy with this, so Exodus defeated them. Using telepathy, teleportation, and resurrection, he's almost undefeatable. Factor in that he refused to save the humans before Mademoiselle Strange teleported the survivors away, and you've got one bad, powerful dude. Coming in at number 3, we've got Punisher. Even way off at the turn of the next century, Punisher's gotta punish. Frank Castle no longer wears the gigantic skull, instead it's a guy by the name of Jake Gallows, which is appropriate. This ex-Thorite actually grew up with Cecil McAdams as his reverend, but we'll save that story for a rainy day. He lost his family to violence and then came across the old war journals of the original Punisher. With this, he decided he would dedicate his life to punishing. At first, he was a member of the pay-per-use police service, but eventually ended up as Doom's Minister of Punishment. As one would expect, this makes it very dangerous to be deemed a criminal in the future. Strapping, angry, and constantly firing guns in both hands, the Punisher does what he does best. Hell, he even has a hand in killing the new Thor. Coming in at number 2, we've got Spider-Man. If you want a crazy origin story, look no further. In the future, there's one company that seems to have an upper hand over the rest. Alchemax. Miguel O'Hara was a scientist working for them, reluctantly performing genetic experiments on less than willing test subjects. After turning a man into a horrid beast that died quickly, O'Hara decided he'd had enough. However, when discussing this with his boss, he accepted a drink that turned out to be laced with Rapture, a highly addictive substance that bonds with the DNA of the person using it. This was supposed to keep O'Hara addicted, and therefore an employee of the company that produced it for the foreseeable future. In order to reverse this addiction, though, O'Hara attempted to rewrite his own genetic code. This procedure was sabotaged by his boss, but ended up including some spider DNA in the process. Thus, Spider-Man 2099 was born. Jam-packed with spider powers, but actually lacking any form of spider sense, O'Hara decided to start fighting crime. Donning a spider suit to hide his identity, he puts his powers to use. Increased strength, agility, stamina, regeneration, some telepathy, claws and fangs, and even spinnerets that generate organic web, and more. Spider-Man is always a fan favorite, that's for sure. Finally, at number 1, we've got Dr. Doom. Unlike most of the other heroes on this list, Doom isn't a clone or a copy or even offspring of another individual, it's still Doom. After disappearing for decades, Dr. Doom decided to upgrade his armor and make a triumphant return, and triumphantly return he does. Coming back in full force, he manages to retake the United States and force his way into a leadership role. Like I said earlier, he employs Jake Gallows as his Minister of Punishment and begins ruling with an iron fist. There really is no stopping Doom, even in the future.
Starting us off in at number 10, Lobo the Duck. Lobo the Duck is strangely enough the combination of Lobo and Donald Duck. No, I'm just kidding. Actually, it's Howard the Duck, and was introduced in Lobo the Duck number 1 from 1997 and is present on Earth 9602, but in a timeline where the Amalgam heroes have died. Lobo the Duck is a fearless and strangely muscular, especially for a duck, anti-hero bounty hunter who, along with his shape-shifting canine sidekick Impossible Dog, is investigating the murders of several Amalgam Comics heroes. Lobo only agrees to find the murderers of these heroes if he gets paid up front though, but soon begins the investigation. Lobo fights his way through Gold Kidney Lady, Dr. Bongface, and various other supervillains before he realizes that the end of the world is about to begin, and only he can stop it. He has all of Lobo's powers and abilities, including immortality, super strength, and a mastery of basically every weapon. He also has a genius-level intellect, a superhuman sense of smell, can track anyone or anything across galaxies, and is a master of Quack Fu. Yeah, I just wanted an excuse to mention this guy, but honestly, immortality makes him pretty damn powerful. And at 9, Pharaoh Man. Pharaoh Man is a combination of Colossus and Pharaoh Lad, and was introduced in X-Patrol number 1, which is clearly a combination of X-Men and Doom Patrol. Peter and his twin Alexei were all each other had, since even their mother couldn't bear to look at their faces. That's not even a face a mother could love. The twins shared everything from the moment they were born, but one day while saving Alexei's life from an oncoming truck, Peter changed into living metal, stopping it, revealing to himself that he was actually a metamutant, but Alexei was unfortunately not. Alexei's growing resentment drove him away from his brother until eventually he left Peter alone. After this, Peter was recruited by Niles Cable, a mysterious traveler from the future, to join the X-Patrol. In their first appearance in X-Patrol number 1, Pharaoh Man and his metamutant teammates became involved in the siege of Latkovia against Dr. Doomsday, a combination of Dr. Doom and Doomsday, which already sounds like Bad News Bears. He has all the powers of Colossus but can change into this form at will, like Pharaoh Lad. And at 8, Harold Stark. Harold Stark is a combination of Iron Man and Green Lantern, and was introduced in Iron Lantern number 1 in 1997. While making modifications to a stationary flight simulator, suddenly the simulator took off with Hal still inside. It seemed to be drawn to a crashed alien spaceship, but the simulator quickly lost power and crashed as well, but only yards from that spaceship. The crash left Hal in bad shape, with jagged metal piercing his chest, but nevertheless he made his way to that spaceship. That's resilient. aliens, where he found the corpse of an alien. In an effort to keep himself alive though, Hal used the alien technology in the ship to make a suit powered by the alien battery inside, which Hal noted looked remarkably like a lantern. Wearing this armor, Hal fought off the aliens who had shot down Romancer's ship, but was also seen by others, being called the Iron Lantern by the media. The suit of armor not only allowed him to survive, but gave him incredible powers, allowing him to create any object he pleased out of green energy, due to the battery he used being powered by O, the living planet. Iron Lantern has the technical and genius level intellect of Tony Stark, but has all the powers of Green Lantern, which is pretty damn cool. And at 7, Dinah Prince. Dinah Prince, also known as Dinah of Themyscira, was first introduced in Bullets and Bracelets #1 and is a combination of Wonder Woman and Elektra. While still young, Dinah left Themyscira to explore man's world, leaving behind her family and her adopted sister Ororo. On her travels, she worked for the King of Wakanda, who gifted her adamantium bracelets. However, she later left to set up her own freelancing business in the US. There she met Trevor Castle and the two got married. At least, they were married until their infant son Ryan was mysteriously killed and the emotional toll was too much. Both of them blamed themselves for not being able to save their son. They seemed to never plan on meeting again. However, Monarch brought the two together again and pitted them against Thanoside, a combination of Thanos and Darkseid. Yeah, he had perceived the Lord of Apocalypse was responsible for the fate of their son, but she discovered that Ryan was not dead, merely displaced in time, and had grown up to become Kanto. Knowing that their son was still alive, Dinah and Trevor seemed to restart their relationship. Dinah has the divine empowerment from Wonder Woman, giving her superhuman strength and durability, as well as a mastery over archery and hand-to-hand combat. And at 6, Logan Wayne. Logan Wayne is a combination of, obviously, Bruce Wayne and Logan, being first introduced in Marvel vs. DC #3, the same issue where this universe was created. At 5 years old, after witnessing his parents' murder at the hands of an armed robber, Logan Wayne was sent to live with his uncle in Alberta, Canada. His uncle was a member of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, and was ambushed and murdered by poachers a short time after his arrival in Canada. After the death of his uncle, Logan was sent to live in a home run by nuns, and as soon as he was old enough, he enlisted in the Royal Canadian Air Forces. Logan was submitted to the Weapon X Project, the Canadian Super Soldier program. It was here that Logan had adamantium bonded to his bones and learned of his metamutant nature. The Weapon X Project was terminated due to his failure, because Logan was ineffective as a weapon because he had a conscience. But this didn't stop him from being pretty damn badass. Having all the powers of Logan as well as things like the Clawcopter and Clawmobile, this is in essence a superpowered Batman, which I think we all know is something to fear. Halfway through and at number 5, Robert Bruce Banner. Robert Bruce Banner is the combination of Bruce Banner and understandably Solomon Grundy, and was first introduced in Doctor Strange Fate #1 as one of his aides. Bruce Banner was a scientist experimenting with radiation, when an experiment he was working on went horribly wrong. However, it fused him with the elemental entity known as Solomon Grundy. The fusion between Banner and Grundy became only known as the Skulk, and after a confrontation with Doctor Strange Fate, the Doc showed Skulk that he could keep him in his human form with use of magic. So in an effort to stay human, or at least be able to become human again, Skulk agreed to work as an agent for Doctor Strange Fate in return for the Doc keeping him in his human form, for most of the time. Skulk possesses all the powers and abilities of both Solomon Grundy and Hulk, and thanks to Doctor Strange Fate, Banner can shapeshift between his human form and his Skulk form at will, and since he possessed the same powers as Grundy, when he dies, he's reborn. But that's not even the craziest thing in this universe. And at 4, Blaze Allen. Speed Demon, first introduced in Speed Demon #1, is, aside from what you might have called your ex to your girlfriends, a combination of Barry Allen and Johnny Blaze. Blaze Allen was a circus daredevil who sold his soul to become the first Speed Demon. Yes, there are actually multiple Speed Demons. The demon component, Etrigan, was also formerly Jay Garrick before the Night Spectre stole Jay's soul. You know, Jay Garrick. Earth 2 Flash. The Night Spectre approached Blaze and asked him to serve in his mission to collect souls from the most pure and most corrupt, which just seems weird to me, but okay, you do you. But Blaze Allen refused, so in an attempt to persuade him, at his wedding, Night Spectre stole Iris's soul. Blaze then accepted the bond, hoping to get Iris back, or at least ensure her safety. It didn't work. Speed Demon speaks only in rhymes, but is a speedster with a flaming skull head that can also breathe fire. Wally West, an amalgamation of Danny Ketch and obviously Wally West, was the next Speed Demon, who accepted the power in order to help his uncle Blaze get Iris back. It's funny, because in a couple of days I'm going on vacation and I'm making it my mission to try to convince at least one person to sell me their soul. Like, it's not actually gonna work, but I think it's gonna be funny if I can do it. Getting close to the end, in at number 3, White Witch. First appearing in Doctor Strange Fate #1 from 1996, White Witch is a combination of Scarlet Witch and Zatanna. White Witch's origin is not completely known, but when she was introduced, she was acting as one of Doctor Strange Fate's aides. Fearing that access would divide the Amalgam Universe back into its original 2 universes, Doctor Strange Fate decides to capture and exterminate him, so he has Mix mystically teleport his 3 agents into his sanctum, known as Arkham Tower. Strange Fate proceeded to explain to the 3 that Access was a greater threat than any of their previous foes, including Mephisatanus or Baron Wotan. Access managed to escape Skulk and Jade Nova by teleporting, but White Witch approached him from behind, pushed him to the ground, climbed on top of him, and with a kiss, he was knocked out. Then White Witch said that you shouldn't send a girl or a monster to do a woman's job. White Witch has all the powers of both Scarlet Witch and Zatanna, making it obvious why Doctor Strange Fate would want her as his aide. That's insane. And it can only be topped by 2 people. Penultimately in at #2, Clark Kent. Super Soldier is fairly evidently the combination of Clark Kent and Steve Rogers, first being introduced in Marvel vs. DC #3 from 1996. During World War II, government scientists were working on a super soldier formula that would transform a man into much more, into some sort of human weapon using cellular samples from an alien corpse. Clark Kent volunteers for the Super Soldier program and they administer the formula, as well as a good chunk of solar radiation. This mixture gave Kent incredible abilities, including all those of Captain America and Superman. Super strength, heat vision, flight, you name it. Now known as Super Soldier, Kent wields the Superman logo as his shield. In March of 1942, Super Soldier fought Ultra Metallo, a robot sent by Lex Luthor to aid Germany in winning the war by killing Clark. But the fight started in Washington DC and ended above the northern Atlantic Ocean, when Clark sacrificed himself to take down the robot, sinking them both into the icy depths. Jimmy Olsen was one of the few witnesses and instead reported that Super Soldier had retired after America had declared that they won the war. 50 years later, the body was thawed out in JLA #4 and Clark joined the Judgment League Avengers as its leader. Finally, in at #1, Doctor Strange Fate. Doctor Strange Fate is one of the most powerful beings on Earth 9602, being a combination of not only Doctor Strange and Dr. Fate, but Charles Xavier as well. While traveling through the Himalayas, Metamutant Charles Xavier was rescued by Nabu the Ancient One, who at the time was Lord Supreme of Order, which is a pretty damn impressive sounding title to say the least. Taught the mysteries of the supernatural world by Nabu, Charles taps into the energies and forces of both telepathic and mystical, making the Metamutant Sorcerer one of the most powerful beings in the Amalgam Universe. Since he was already a powerful telepath, Charles quickly surpasses his teacher and was promoted to the new Lord Supreme of Order. Doctor Strange Fate was also one of the founding members of the Judgment League Avengers, and began pursuing threats in shadowy realms, leaving the protection of Earth to, lesser beings.
#10, Rogers. This alternate version of Captain America resided in Earth 311, the 1602 reality, but initially came from the dystopian future reality of Earth 460, where Purple Man, aka Kilgrave, had become president for life. As such, Purple Man had seen Captain America as one of the last remaining threats to his dictatorship, and rather than make a martyr out of him through execution, he sent him back into the past, displacing the hero. Captain America took a new identity in the reality of Earth 311, adopting the name Rogers, and used his opportunity to warn the First Nations peoples of the Americas of the risk posed to their existence by the settlers who would come. As Rogers, during his time on Earth 311, Captain America helped maintain peace between the indigenous peoples of the land and the Roanoke colony settlers. In this reality, Roanoke also never disappeared due to the fact that they had Rogers there to help them survive the harsh environment of their new home. #9, Iron Man. The bullet points version of Steve Rogers never became a super soldier. Instead, he joins Project Iron Man during World War II, becoming the first Iron Man in history. In order to become this new mechanical hero, he has to become surgically grafted to the suit. He would then fight during World War II and later retire but be called back into action to take on the Hulk, who in this reality was Peter Parker. As in most realities, Steve, even as Iron Man, is really no match for that hulking behemoth, and ends up dying in battle against him. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list, if you want more lists like it, be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. Number 8. Age of X. This version of Captain America was kind of a villain, although it wasn't entirely his fault. He was led to believe that in order to protect the world, he and his team of Avengers would have to take out and defeat all of the mutants, which included Cap hunting down not just all kinds of mutants, but all ages of mutants as well, if you pick up what I'm putting down. This Captain America mowed down tons of mutant kind with a gun, including Mystique, who was guarding mutant children. Fortunately, Mystique with her dying breath causes Captain America to question his mission and doubt that his objective is truly noble. He decides to go against orders and instead fight alongside the mutants working to protect them. Cap dies a hero, taking on the Hulk, who decides to stick with the mission, calling Steve a traitor. Once again, another reality where it's Cap versus Hulk and Hulk just destroys Cap. Number 7. Union Soldier Stephen Rogers. What if Captain America fought in the American Civil War? Well, you can bet this is the version of the hero that we would get. Stephen Rogers vs 717 is the character who first appeared in the What If Captain America issue number 1 out of 2005. Here we explore just that version of Steve, who served in the American Civil War as a Union soldier. In the end, he turns against his villainous Colonel Bucky Barnes, who in this reality becomes the supervillain White Skull. In so doing, Stephen becomes injured and is taken in and saved by the Eagle Chief, Wee Piak. Not only does the Eagle Chief save his life, but he also grants him extra strength, transforming him into the hero Captain America, who is armed with a mystical shield, peak human physique, and reflexes, and is rumored to be protected against all harm. This version of Captain America fights hard throughout the years to make sure the United States is a place of opportunity for all who call it their home. He truly represents the Captain America ideal of equality. Number 6. Ultimate Captain America. In the Ultimate Universe of Earth 1610, Captain America is considered to be even more powerful than his 616 counterpart. The super soldier serum here didn't just prolong his life and leave him in peak human condition across the board, increasing his strength, speed, and durability, but it also gave him an accelerated healing factor and put him at a superhuman level when it came to his strength and his speed. It was once claimed that Steve Rogers of this reality could bench press a car. Across the board, this version could be considered stronger than the 616 version, although I would argue that 616 Captain America does have better leadership skills than our 1610 version. But that's just me. Number 5. Danielle Cage. Danielle Cage is the future daughter of Jessica Jones and Luke Cage. This could be who the future little 616 Danielle Cage ends up as, or maybe not. Only time will tell if Danielle ends up having a similar future to this alternate version of herself and Captain America, or not. In this reality of Earth 15061, Danielle Cage grows up to become the hero Captain America, possessing the abilities of both her father and her mother, meaning she's both super strong and super durable and can fly, all that good stuff you've come to know and love from both Luke and Jessica's heroic power sets. As Captain America in the future, she also has inherited and wields the Captain America shield. Number 4. MCU Captain America. I mean, of course MCU Captain America has to make our cut. The Marvel Cinematic version of the character is not only extremely popular, but is also deemed worthy enough to lift Thor's hammer, giving us that awesome fight scene in Avengers Endgame where Thor and Captain America are switching back and forth, alternating between sharing and wielding Mjolnir and Stormbreaker. This ultimately gives Cap a big power boost, being able to wield Thor's weapons, especially considering that Thor is one of the most powerful members of the Avengers team, in part because of his powerful, magical, and also kinda cosmic weapons. Number 3. Carol Danvers. That's right, Carol at one point managed to become Captain America. This has actually happened in more than one reality, but for this list we're going to focus on the version of Carol Cap that comes from the Venomverse. She appears as Captain America in Venomverse War Stories and hails from the same reality as Venom Rocket, Earth 18197. In the story she appears in, Captain America Carol Danvers and Venom Rocket battle it out as Rocket is looking to cash in on a bounty for the Kree who want Carol Danvers. Venom Rocket and Captain America seem pretty evenly matched here, but in the end, Rocket does not manage to capture Carol, and Carol seemingly ends up the victor of that match, though undoubtedly left with a pretty big mess to clean up as a result of their destructive battle. Carol Danvers as Captain America still seemingly possesses some version of her Kree physiology and her 616 power set here, making her a pretty powerful alternate version of Captain America. Number 2. Super Soldier. Super Soldier hails from the Amalgam Universe. Stories and characters created using the combined lore of DC Comics' main roster of superheroes and villains and Marvel Comics' main roster of superheroes and villains. Super Soldier himself is an alternate version created by combining the heroes Captain America from Marvel and Superman from DC. Clark Kent ended up in the Super Soldier program during World War II, which used alien DNA taken from a corpse that was discovered to alter Clark Kent permanently, granting him superhuman powers. He is the combined power set of both Cap and Supes, making him pretty crazy powerful, although he also comes with his own highly dangerous villain as well, the Green Skull, and his own weakness to the ore known as Green K. So keep in mind, he does have that weakness. Number 1. Soldier Supreme. Soldier Supreme is what you get when you combine the mystical powerhouse of Doctor Strange with the all-American war hero Captain America. The result is a character who happens to be tough, strong, fast, and a gifted fighter, while also possessing tons of mystical knowledge and abilities. Soldier Supreme hails from Warp World, the reality created by Gamora when she folded the universe in half using the power of the Infinity Stones. Here, Steve Rogers participated in the Super Soldier program, which was really a front for something less scientific and more magical in nature. Conducting a series of rituals, Dr. Morgan Erskine transformed Steven Rogers into the Soldier Supreme.
Kicking off the list at number 10, Deadpool Kid. Wade in the Wild West. Sign me up. Wade Wilson of Earth 1108 made his first appearance in Deadpool Merc with a Mouth issue 7. Now when we meet him, he's wanted for bank robbery, arson, software piracy, and of course stampeding pygmy goats through an orphanage, you know, everyday things that we always do. And then even in the dusty days, Deadpool still finds a way to cause trouble. He would constantly boast about him wanting to take over the town, and he had his sights set on Sheriff Fury and Bounty Hunter Logan. After getting shot in the head by Earth 616 Deadpool, our main Deadpool, the Kid went down. But he didn't stay down, of course. He survived and was next seen alongside Dreadpool in the hunt for evil Deadpools in the universe. Number 9. Kidpool. Similar name, but much different. Kidpool comes from Earth 10330. Now he made his first appearance in Prelude to Deadpool Corps issue 2, and he started his days out as a student of the Xavier Orphanage for Troubled Boys. Now due to his abrasive personality, he of course didn't fit in with the other super kids, so he was lonely most of the time. Now one day he was sent to detention with Scott Summers, and Wade convinced Scott that they should both break out and go to prom instead. I agree, I mean detention during prom, come on, that's just cruel. But in order to convince Scotty Boy to be a rebel, Wade promised him he'd help Scott get with Jean Grey. That ought to do the trick. While at prom, Kidpool caused trouble and even fought Logan. It was a hot mess. Mistress Storm stopped the fight and Kidpool was on his way out when Deadpool arrived and also recruited this Kidpool. And before we continue with this list, if you want to go ahead and give us a thumbs up, that would be great. It helps our channel out quite a bit. You guys are the best. Thanks for your support. Now let's get right back to this video. Number 8, Dreadpool. In the reality of Earth 12101, the X-Men brought Wade to Dr. Ben Brighton, aka Psycho Man, in an attempt to cure Wade. Now they wanted him to shut down all these voices in Wade's head, but he didn't do that. He actually did the opposite. Wade was now encouraged to kill everybody in the Marvel Universe. And he started out by going after the Fantastic Four. Reed and the Thing were toast in just a couple of pages. Sue Storm held Dreadpool off by making his head explode, but once he healed, she was next to go. Dreadpool stole a device from Reed Richards that he used to take down the Watcher. So right off the bat, things get ugly. Number 7, Evil Deadpool. Keeping those sinister vibes going, Evil Deadpool is from our 616 main universe. He actually came to life during the pages of Deadpool Volume 4, issue 44. Now it actually all started with Ella Whitby. She was a psychiatrist who was obsessed with Wade Wilson. She was so obsessed that she would keep body parts that he lost over time. She would collect parts of him and then keep them in her freezer, you know, right next to the ice packs, of course. So when Deadpool found out about this creepy old cold collection, he threw them all in the dumpster. He just got rid of them. But that was a mistake because once those body parts thawed out, they fused together to make another evil Deadpool. Just the smell of that freezer alone, I would have tapped out by day 3. Number 6, Wolverine Pool. This next one is a total badass, one of my favorites if you ask me. Brief, but definitely memorable. First appearing in Cable in Deadpool issue 46, 6, we see Wade Wilson after he's undergone the Weapon X program. He has his skeleton bonded with adamantium, and then he's recruited by Dreadpool to take on the evil Deadpool core members. So he joined the battle and killed Deadpool Pulp, but during the fight, main Wade tossed a grenade full of bugs at Wolverine Pool. So the grenade went off and the bugs chewed at Wade's skin, just chewed him apart until nothing was left over except the adamantium skeleton and claws. Definitely the grossest way to go out, that's for sure. Number 5, Death Mask. While I mentioned a botched surgery earlier with Wade, this next one went exactly as planned. On Earth 11683, Reed Richards was able to remove a lethal brain tumor from Wade's head, so now he was better off than ever. No evil voices, and now he was actually a genius. But did he change the world one revolutionary invention at a time? Nope, he was a master criminal. But still, he's smart, I don't know. He built an empire. Wade went by the name Death Mask and killed that world's Victor Von Doom, and his outfit was actually a red version of Doom's. It was pretty sweet, not gonna lie. Even after Death Mask was beaten by our main Deadpool, it didn't end there. Death Mask made a deal with Mephisto in order to release monsters on Earth, one of those monsters being Infernal Hulk. Ouch. Number 4, Dogpool. Wade Wilson of Earth 103173, aka Dogpool, made his first appearance in Prelude to Deadpool Core issue 3. Now Wilson was a dog being used as a test subject for Mascara X, this hot new product that could replenish itself after just one use. How beautiful and lovely and convenient, might I add. Now this version obviously is inspired from real life animal testing and abuse that happens, so it's pretty sweet when Wilson gets superpowers. Now they thought the dog didn't make it after a test, his body turned all corpse-like, so they got rid of it. But those regenerative abilities brought this pet back to life. A circus truck just ended up going by and seeing this immortal dog, and then Deadpool became the starring act of their show. Come and see the death-defying hound, what a headline. He was working there until Deadpool came and also recruited him for the Deadpool Corps. Number 3, Deadman Wade. Coming from the Age of Apocalypse storyline on Earth 295, Deadman Wade was initially part of Apocalypse's Pale Riders. Danny Moonstar would just torture him non-stop. That was his whole thing. But that's gotta be a bit distracting, right? While the Riders were seeking out Avalon, Damask was so annoyed by the torture and the sounds that she strangled Moonstar to death. She just couldn't take it anymore. It's like when my sister would sing Taylor Swift, I'm like, a 4-hour drive, come on. So Deadman Wade wasn't too happy at this point, but when they finally arrived to Avalon, Wade's attack on innocent people was so much that Nightcrawler deemed it necessary to end his life. And he did so by teleporting away whilst grabbing his head. If you want to see Deadman Wade in more agony, begin so with Excalibur issue 1. Number 2, Ultimate Deadpool. Wade E. Wilson from the Ultimate Comic Run, Earth 1610 that is, made his first appearance at Ultimate Spider-Man issue 91. Now he had a pretty rough time when it comes to the Ultimates. The Ultimates are a different story, different origins, but Wade's is still bad. See, in Ultimate Spider-Man, Wade E. Wilson gets recruited to hunt down mutants on live television, which sounds like a pretty cool gig, but the government figured this is what the people want, and honestly, they're not too far off. People love tuning in. This is like the hot show. It's the talk of the town. And his appearance is even more shocking once Spider-Man unmasks him, and the fact that he does so on live television causes Wadey to go nuts. And it was even worse than that because Spider-Man made him feel horrible for how he looked. He said his face smelled like a KFC dumpster on a hot day. What a roast. Oh my god, Spider-Man, relax. And also in Ultimate Spider-Man issue 92, Spider-Man is about to be unmasked himself, but Deadpool prevents it from happening. He says to respect the mask. How ironic. Number 1, Lady Deadpool. We just met Lady Loki and she kind of stole the entire show on Disney+, so we gotta end this list with Lady Deadpool. Wanda Wilson from Earth 3010 made her first appearance in Deadpool Merc the Mouth issue 7. Now this version of Deadpool cared, dare I say. She wanted to at least feel like she belonged and was part of a bigger, more important movement. So she led an assault force against the crooked General America, which was an evil Captain America in that world, and then she eventually found her place leading the Deadpool Corps, that team I've been mentioning throughout this entire list. In fact, Lady Deadpool was the one to tip off our main 616 Wade on the whole operation. Wade actually tossed Headpool at General America, but then he bit his arm off. Headpool was from the zombie universe, so Wade had to take the General's infected arm with him after he left Wanda's Earth. All the blood, all the arms, all the Deadpools, all the fun.
Number 10, Dupe. Dupe is one of the X-Men who is known for being pretty ridiculous, and as such, a lot of people do not take Dupe seriously. at all, which also extends to Dupe's power levels. However, I would argue that Dupe is actually one of the most powerful X-Men ever, who is simply grossly underrated due to his nonsensical appearance and depiction. Dupe has powers that allow him to influence the emotions of others, perform magic, resurrect, travel in the liminal space between comic book panels, shatter the fourth wall as he pleases, and honestly, so much more. I think perhaps this is the reason, in fact, that he doesn't appear as often in the comics, and therefore isn't as appreciated for his powers by fans. He's just too crazy. He's just too powerful. And friends, before I move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd and you love it when we talk about X-Men, I know I love it, be sure that you click that subscribe button, ring that bell so you do not miss out whenever we are talking about all the X-Men goodness. Number 9, Tempest. Tempest could literally undo anyone in the blink of an eye, like she did with Matthew Malloy, who was set up to be pretty much the most powerful mutant in almost all of existence, I would say. His reality bending was honestly off the charts, and yet Tempest was able to defeat him by traveling back in time to make sure his parents never met. Ho-ho. Her ability allows her to create time bubbles in which she can control the flow of time. Her powers earned her a place on Krakoa's Five, a team created for the purpose of handling all mutant resurrections. She can slow or speed up time as much as she wants within the bubbles, and can also use her chronokinesis powers to time travel. Number 8, Juggernaut. Juggernaut, a well-known X-Men antagonist, is widely regarded as one of the most powerful characters in the comics. Even though he is not a mutant, he became a member of the X-Men team after losing most of his abilities due to a dispute with Cyttorak and seeking reconciliation with his stepbrother Charles Xavier. Interestingly, Juggernaut managed to form many friendships during his time with the X-Men. When I say that Juggy is underrated, I don't necessarily mean as a powerful character. I think we all know how powerful and dangerous Juggernaut can be. I personally would not want to face him, that is for sure. But when it comes to him as a member of the X-Men, I feel like this is often overlooked, and that overall he's a somewhat underrated member of the team in terms of what he brings to it. And I don't just mean in terms of his powers. Number 7, Beast. Beast is underrated on, honestly, a lot of levels, whether we're talking about classic Beast or current Beast, but especially I feel with the current Beast that we have, that guy is downright deadly. Not only was he unable to be reined in by Wolverine, who ultimately ended up killing Beast after Beast had him become his lapdog to be sent out on some of the darkest missions of X-Force, reducing Wolverine to a mere tool used for wiping out perceived threats to Krakoa, but he also perhaps has become even more dangerous after being resurrected. Now we have multiple Beast clones who themselves are working on their own small army of Wolverine clones with the project known as Weapons of X. Number 6, Synch. Synch is only now starting to be fully appreciated by fans around the world, all thanks to his reappearance in the Krakoa era. Synch was one of the people prioritized for resurrection, as he was needed to go on a mission into the Vault where the Children of the Vault had retreated. Considering them and their evolution a threat, the Quiet Council put together a small away team to investigate what was happening inside the Vault, sending them out to basically infiltrate it. This is just what Synch, Darwin, and Laura Kinney, then known as Wolverine, currently known as Talon in the comics, were tasked to do. It's here that we got to bask in Synch's rainbow colors, saw the relationship develop between Everett himself and Laura, and where we learned that it might be possible for Synch to even sync with others who were not mutants. We'd also learn in the X-Men series that Synch had evolved to a point that he could remain synced with his fellow mutants even when outside of their range, making Synch possibly one of the most powerful mutants to just have ever existed. Number 5, Banshee. Banshee, simply put, isn't a hero we focused on here on Top 10 Nerd. I can't remember the last time I featured him on a list, and yet he kicks butt consistently in the comics. Banshee's mutant powers turn him into a siren, which oddly enough is the name for his daughter, who shares his abilities, the name that she took up for herself as an active mutant hero. Banshee can use his powers to attack his opponents, fly, see in the dark with sonar abilities, influence and persuade his opponents, and even create shields, all with the use of his amazing voice. Basically, he's like a smaller scale Black Bolt, which means that while Black Bolt, the Inhuman King, gets a ton of love in the comics and outside, other Sonic-based heroes like Banshees, Sean Cassidy tend to fall by the wayside. sadly. Number 4. Chimera. Chimera is the daughter of Storm and likely Black Panther, who hails from the alternate reality 13729. Chimera seems to have inherited the powers of her mother, but also shares a connection to the Earth, which allows her to draw on and harness its energy. She is also a skilled tracker and can communicate telepathically with animals. I'd also assume, as she's the daughter of Storm and of T'Challa, that she is a skilled combatant as well, as while Storm is more well known for her goddess status and weather manipulation powers, she's also an extremely skilled fighter as well, and her dad would obviously be a given inspiration for her as a fighter. Black Panther is well known for his fighting prowess. Chimera may have hailed from Earth 13729, where she was a member of the X-Men, but after being displaced to Earth 616, the main comic book continuity, she also became a member of the X-Men there as well. Number 3. Angel/Archangel. Warren Worthington III is not usually folks' first pick for mutants who are their favorite among those who have belonged to the X-Men team, but it is important, I think, to acknowledge Warren's history with the mutants and consider the fact that he is a legacy member of the X-Men. Warren joined up with the very first roster of the X-Men team to have ever existed, being one of the first members to be brought together by Charles Xavier. Sure, he might have hollow bones, and his powers may mostly involve just flight, but when it comes to flying, Warren has proven in the past that he is one of the best, and in his Archangel form, he is even more powerful. He is also one of the most useful mutants outside of his power set, being an extremely accomplished businessman who tends to be one of the most charismatic members of the X-Men, who since his early days has been popular with the public, helping the team's image. Number 2. Polaris. Polaris is a character who I feel like often gets overshadowed by her dad, Magneto, and yet she too is just as much, or nearly as much I'd say, of a powerhouse as he is. Polaris has had somewhat of a rough go in recent years, especially when it comes to confronting her past and moving forward towards her future. I would love to see more moments like when she joined the X-Men, where she gets her moment in the spotlight. It's well deserved, and Lorna Dane deserves to not have her character sabotaged at every single turn, like has happened to her in some of her past. She's underrated on multiple levels, both as a hero and as a character with some real depth to her. I think it would be really amazing to see her team up with her now considered adoptive sister and brother as well to fight against injustice in the world. I love all the healing we've been doing with this whole family lately, and it would be so cool to continue along that path and see where else it could take us, especially if we bring the family together as a unit. I've seen it happen a little bit in the comics, but I'd love to see more of it. Number 1. Kid Omega. Poor Kid Omega's trope initially with his appearance in the Krakoan era X-Men comics involved him constantly being taken out, as in permanently defeated. But don't let that fool you. Quentin Quire is still a psionic badass who deserves your respect. He is considered to be one of a limited few mutants who belong to the Omega level class, meaning that he has unlimited potential in terms of what he can accomplish. And while being super powerful psionically, he's also super brilliant as well, and can actually think faster and at a higher capacity than even other extremely powerful and skilled Omega level telepaths. Quentin joined up with Logan's X-Men and has been shown to be a potential future Phoenix in Wolverine and the X-Men issue number 42.
Number 10. Mantis. Mantis actually got her start in comics when she used her abilities to reform Swordsman or Jacques Duquesne, which actually got her into the Avengers. Mantis's powers and abilities are more than what you may have gathered from her film counterpart. Mantis has complete control over her entire body, which in turn gives her peak human agility, the ability to accelerate healing through force of will, and an empathic nature enabling her to communicate telepathically with and sense the emotions of others as psychic vibrations. She can also control her heart and respiratory rate and blood flow as well. Her mastery of the Kotati priest's martial arts, which focuses on the manipulation of nerve endings and pressure points, has enabled her to knock out beings as powerful as Thor, and her telepathic and empathic abilities are improved upon thanks to the 2 little antennae that she has coming out of her head. But it doesn't stop there though. Mantis also gained abilities when she merged with the Kotati, such as being able to communicate with both plants and animals, and survive in space in a physically solid energy form. She can transfer herself from plant life to plant life across interstellar distances or even dimensions, creating a new body from the plant life wherever she ends up. She can transmit and receive telepathic impressions, she has precognitive powers, and more recently, she can fire powerful pyrokinetic energy blasts from energy fields, communicate directly with cosmic beings such as Eternity and Death, and completely control her personal energies as well as her physical form. I don't want to keep talking about it anymore. Number 9. Hawkeye. Clint Barton is essentially just a regular human man, but despite that, and likely because of his abilities and talents, he is considered a power level 4 according to Nick Fury's intel. whatever that means. Those aforementioned abilities include being a master of archery in the use of regular bows, longbows, compound bows, and crossbows, with basically perfect accuracy, able to fire multiple arrows at a single target in just a few seconds, hitting multiple targets in a few quick strokes, and directly hitting small targets at the greatest of distances. But he now also has near perfect precision with any aimed or thrown weapon. He is at the peak level of human eyesight possible, is in peak athletic human condition with peak strength, endurance, and reflexes. He's an expert acrobat, tactician, and master martial artist, but just listing off his abilities isn't going to give you a proper understanding of how cool Hawkeye is. So what has he done? In Avengers Volume 3, number 14, Hawkeye was cornered by 17 marksmen and took them all down without taking a single life. And in Hawkeye Volume 4, number 1, Clint ran into a wanted criminal in a bar and took him down silently, somehow fracturing his neck with a deck of cards. I don't know. Number 8, Tigra. When Greer Nelson first came on the scene, she was just known as the Cat, and was given powers tied to her costume. But that all changed when she became Tigra, or Tigra, however you want to pronounce it. Mutating into a human-tiger hybrid in a ritual that bound her to the, quote, cat people, which while it may be a silly name, was a race of humanoid cats who were created in the Middle Ages, so cat people. Now before you laugh at her for looking silly, just know that in her tiger form, Tigra is granted some useful abilities. Her superhuman strength allows her to lift over 10 tons with her leg muscles, allowing her to perform a standing jump of 12 feet. She can run at speeds of around 70 miles per hour, has superhuman durability, agility, reflexes, and stamina, and as we all know, cats have heightened senses and like to knock things off of wherever you carefully place them. And as far as I know, the former is still the same with Tigra, whose senses are about 10 times that of a human's. Tigra's eyesight can sense the infrared portion of the electromagnetic spectrum, allowing her for night vision. She can more easily detect the movements of an opponent. Her hearing is so strong that she can detect a ball of tissue paper being dropped at a distance of 40 feet, just like every other cat, and her sense of smell is so developed she can selectively sort through odors just to track someone. Number 7, Shang-Chi. Shang-Chi is one of, if not the greatest martial artist on Earth. He was trained from birth to become the ultimate warrior. He can take on multiple opponents at once and can even defeat people much more superhumanly powerful than he is. In fact, in the White Hot Room, when the Phoenix organized a tournament to pick who would be the new host, the only reason that Shang-Chi lost was because he refused to take someone's life, having him expelled from that tournament. He is particularly skilled in Chinese martial arts, but his skill branches out to many other forms of martial arts as well. In one case, he even worked with Spider-Man to create a new martial art based on Peter's powers. Shang-Chi also is able to manipulate Chi energy, which he can use to enhance his strength and durability, and can even detect others based on their energy, like he did when he detected a psionically masked Jean Grey. But Shang-Chi gets a much more significant boost of power when he's using the 10 rings. He can use those rings as projectiles, manipulate their size, and use them to levitate or even fly. The rings grant the martial master superhuman strength, durability, speed, and stamina, and he can even manipulate the energies from the rings to do many other things as well. And then, just to top it all off, thanks to the other side of his heritage, Shang-Chi inherited his mother's psionic abilities to communicate with his blood relatives, even the deceased ones. Freaky. Number 6, Jack of Hearts. Jonathan Hart is a hero you may not have heard of, or maybe you have, I don't know. What I do know is that Jack Hart was the son of a brilliant scientist, a scientist that created the ridiculously efficient liquid sci-fi fuel called Zero Fluid. In a tragic comic book backstory, that fluid was exposed to Jack and it gave him his awesome but difficult to control abilities. Importantly, he was also part alien, with his mother hailing from the Contraxian race. Now, due to his cellular mutation that took place after his Zero Fluid exposure, Jonathan Hart is now able to produce pink concussive energy beams and blasts from his hands and body, taking up the incredibly clever name of Jack of Hearts. Jack of Hearts can use his zero energy blast to fly at speeds currently not specifically known, but he has flown halfway across the United States in 3 minutes flat, which is pretty fast. His biological structure was reformed to basically give him the superhuman starter pack abilities, but his strength has been able to lift 25 tons. He has enhanced speed, stamina, healing factor, and durability, able to withstand some pretty heavy hits and survive in the vacuum of space. He also went through another mutation which gave him the ability to think as fast as a computer can, which is really cool, and he can retain and retrieve stored information from deep recesses of his brain, which is also really cool. Number 5. Blue Marvel. Adam Brashear, a former Marine and scientist turned superhero, stands as one of Marvel Comics' most formidable heavyweights. Not only does he have immense physical strength, but he also ranks among the most brilliant minds in the Marvel Universe. He's an underutilized character who happens to be one of my personal favorites. His origin story unfolds in the tumultuous 1960s amid a groundbreaking project centered on utilizing antimatter as an energy source. However, an unforeseen explosion during the experiment forever changed Adam and his close friend, Connor. The cataclysmic event transformed Adam into a living, stable antimatter reactor, giving him extraordinary superhuman abilities. Embracing his powers, he assumed the mantle of the Blue Marvel, a masked hero dedicated to safeguarding the world, but tragically, Connor's fate took a darker turn as he became Anti-Man, a villain. Their epic clashes reached a climax during one unforgettable battle when the Blue Marvel's mask was torn away, revealing his identity as an African American hero. In the racially charged climate of the 1960s America, President John F. Kennedy urged him to retire prematurely to alleviate tensions. It wasn't until decades later that he came back as a full-on superhero and kicked some serious butt in the Avengers. Number 4. Sersi. Sersi is a member of the Eternals, an evolutionary offshoot of humanity gifted with amazing powers and abilities to look after the human race through the ages, which is similar but also just a smidgen bit different from the Eternals' movie counterparts. As an Eternal, Sersi's body is augmented by cosmic energy and she has total mental control over her entire molecular structure, which allows her and other Eternals to be immortal, indestructible, and invulnerable to pretty much anything. Sersi has enough strength to bench 20 tons, but thanks to her telekinesis, she can augment that to lift about 25 tons. She can also fly at around 760 miles per hour, which is, I don't know about you, but I think that's pretty dang fast. She can project cosmic energy, has telepathy that allows her to hypnotize weak-minded fools, but she can also teleport, but she hates it, and she is even able to project images from her mind, which is such a cool idea for an ability. Those are all the powers that we don't see in the Eternals movie, because arguably the ability she has the most talent in is her matter transmutation ability, which allows Sersi to transmute nearly any item or being into almost whatever she wants them to be. Among the Eternals, she has the highest ranking of power with this ability, and it allows her to self-heal any injury she does actually sustain, which aren't many because she's awesome. Number 3. Luke Cage. Criminal turned unstoppable superhero is quite the feat, but Luke Cage handles that with grace, becoming a pillar of his community and even eventually becoming mayor of New York itself. Whenever I think of Luke Cage, the word unstoppable is what actually comes to mind. I just think of him as this big brick wall just standing in the way of anyone who would try to harm anyone else. Luke went through a super soldier experiment known as the Burstein process, which increased his cellular regeneration rate. This means that Luke was given a level of super strength that, with training and experience, has made him strong enough to lift 50 tons. But there have been times where he's exceeded that, and this strength lets him perform thunderclaps, leap incredible distances, and he's been able to grab onto the back of an aeroplane and force it to come to a complete stop. That is nuts. Alongside his strength, he was obviously given superhuman stamina to match with that, but most know him for his nigh invulnerability. Luke's skin, muscles, and bone tissue are about as hard as titanium steel, making him basically immune to bullets and blades. He can withstand hits of around 1 ton and blasts of 150 pounds of TNT, but those numbers wax and wane depending on the story. He has taken hits from people far stronger than himself and survived falls from 90 stories up. If Peter Parker is the heart of New York, Luke Cage is basically like the wall. Number 2. Wasp. Traditionally, the Wasp has been considered one of the less powerful members of the Avengers. Her unique abilities, which include shrinking, flight, and emitting energy blasts through her Wasp sting, are undeniably formidable, yet individually they might be classified as street-level powers. In the presence of iconic figures like Captain America, Thor, and Iron Man, few anticipated that the Wasp would rise to prominence within the team's ranks. However, the Wasp defied those expectations in remarkable fashion. She achieved the distinction of becoming the first woman to lead the Avengers ever, a feat that astonished her teammates and fans alike. Her years of experience endowed her with wisdom and capabilities that far exceed the sum of her individual powers. The Wasp's mastery of her abilities, coupled with her intelligence and resourcefulness, transformed her into a formidable hero who surpassed the expectations of everyone everyone who had ever underestimated her. And finally, in at number 1 today is Protector. Noh-Varr, also known as the Protector, is an extraterrestrial figure who carries a bit of a renegade reputation. In a remarkable display of his power, he once took down both Thor and Captain Marvel simultaneously, an impressive feat by any measure. However, it's worth noting that many readers may not be familiar with the character of the Protector, as Noh-Varr has gained more substantial recognition among fans as Marvel Boy, particularly through his involvement with the Young Avengers. Hailing from Earth 200080 as a Kree super soldier, Noh-Varr has since laid claim to the vast universe of Earth 616 as his own. His unique set of powers include, and I'm not joking, explosive fingernails, psychedelic saliva, wall crawling abilities, heightened senses, and a remarkable conscious control over various bodily functions, among other powers. Noh-Varr's prowess in combat is truly formidable, a trait that certainly captured the attention of his teammate turned lover, Hercules. In shedding his Avengers affiliation and the Protector moniker, Noh-Varr has found his true calling and thrived as a member of the Young Avengers, the West Coast Avengers, and has even transitioned into the role of an interstellar diplomat and a Guardian of the Galaxy.